And go.
Okay.
All right, good morning, everyone. I am going to call our meeting to order. We're officially in order, and now we briefing from Mike McLaughlin.
We only have one. I'm gonna try to be as lively as Lamar usually is. He couldn't make it up here this morning. So we are at 1800 Diagonal Road on the third floor in Chesapeake Potomac Room. If we need to call 911, Mary Stell, I'm gonna assign you, you're assigned to that. Secondary, Lord Farmer. DJ, CPR. When we have meetings, DJ is always the first one to raise his hand for CPR. That's why it's assigned here too. I'm assigned to meet first responders. Michael West, Mr. Westerman, General Counsel is secondary. ED and first aid kit. Matt Jett, I'm gonna ask you to grab that. Over to King, over across King, from the King Conference Room. Stairwells and fire extinguishers, stairwells and bathrooms. Stairwells on both sides of the elevator. The bathrooms are both on the far side of the elevator. You need to use those. If you do need to use the restroom, there is some key cards out here, the orange key cards. You need to take them with you to be able to get into the restroom and get back into our office suite. If we need to evacuate, we will use the stairwells. Luckily, we're on the third floor, only a couple floors down. We'll meet at Reineker's and Duke across from Whole Foods. So just follow us in front of the Fidelity over on Reineker's and Duke. Make sure the person sitting to your left is present. If there is an active shooter, flee, hide, fight. And for those attending remotely, please be aware of your surroundings. For those of us here, be careful of the chairs. They might pinch you on the tables. So unless I'm missing anything, DJ gave me a look there. Might have missed something. No. We're gonna pass it on back to the chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Well, good morning. Welcome, everyone. Again, it's great to be here at the last meeting we had. I think I was 3 days into the job, so now I'm a few months into the job, but great to be here. I know we have a lot that is going on. So just a reminder to please silence all electronic devices if you have any of those. Also just want to thank VPRA and in particular Mike McLaughlin. Earlier this week, the Commonwealth Transportation Board was up in Alexandria for our monthly meeting, and Mike and some other VPRA staff did a great job of giving CTB board members a tour of the construction work that's underway. So thank you for that. So with that, why don't we move to do a roll call for attendance. So Mary Estelle, I'll turn to you.
Ms. Bushu?
Here.
Ms. Cho? I know Dallas is representing Ms. Cho today. Mr. Crawford?
Here.
Mr. Delandro? Ms. Dorsch?
Here.
Mr. Flowers?
Mr. Flowers is out here.
Mr. Jordan?
Here.
Ms. Lawrence?
Here.
Apologies, present.
Thank you. Ms. Mitchell?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Payne?
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Reinhardt?
Here.
Ms. Spears?
Here.
Mr. Watkins? And Mr. Zhang?
Here.
Thank you. You have a call.
Mary Estelle. Next up, we have for public comment. No one has signed up to us. I want to see, I know we have a few visitors in the room. If there is anyone who wanted to provide public comment. All right, hearing none, we will move forward. I want to first mention before we kind of get too much further down the agenda, we know that there are some board members that have some schedule issues, so we're going to do a slight adjustment to our agenda. We are going to move item number 11 to happen after lunch, and we will move our budget discussion to happen before we break for lunch. So we can accommodate taking action needed and try to move judiciously through the various other items on the agenda. But with that, I want to see if we have if there's a motion to approve the January 22nd, 2026 VPRA meeting minutes. And is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no. And any abstentions? All right, with that, we will move to item number 7, the director's report, executive director's report.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to go through this quickly because really the important thing that we need to get approved is the budget today. We're going to also be a little bit repetitive. We kept the executive director's report in the same format as we always do. And it's really, I happened to just by accident look at one of the first executive director reports we did about 5 years ago. And the way this report has evolved has really been important because we try to be responsive to everybody's feedback. And I said I'd go through this quickly, and now I'm being very, very wordy. But look, we're going to go through this quickly. We're going to talk more during the construction update report about some of the progress that we're making. The budget's going to talk about a lot of the finance stuff. So we kept this in the same format, but I'm going to go through it quickly because I don't want to be duplicate. So there you go. That was not as well orchestrated as I thought. The recent updates, we once a year get all of the Alexandria folks and all the Richmond folks together in one place to talk about strategic planning, to do kind of team coaching development. And we did that earlier in May. Highly appreciated by folks. We do an employee survey afterwards and did a whole segment of persuasion skills. So we continue to grow and evolve as a workforce. That was again very well received. Also, I was asked by the FRA to speak on a rail technology summit. I was there with another member of State Sports Service, Patricia Quinn from Maine, and then the FRA was there. And then, as you can see, folks from Amtrak. So it really shows that Virginia is seen as a leader in state passenger rail and accentuates the pressure that we have on us to continue moving forward. The good news is we continue to have successes. All right, I want to spend a little bit of time on Shenandoah Valley Trail. So you all likely remember back in the fall of 2025, we were asked to orchestrate an agreement with the Shenandoah Valley Trail. It's just short of a 50-mile rail corridor out west that has not been used for anything of note in years. Norfolk Southern is looking to sell it, and there was an agreement we were negotiating with the Shenandoah Valley Trail team, Shenandoah Valley Trail Battlefield, that's the word I mean. And we had come very, very close to an agreement with them where we would facilitate money that's not ours being used to purchase the trail. They would own the trail, they would have to maintain the trail. We would kind of oversee that transaction, and then they would do a rail and a trail project that would put a trail there and also keep the rail there for future use. This is a good thing for us, we thought, because it mitigated any risk that we had, but it also allowed us to maintain access to that rail for the future. Candidly, that future is not 2030, that future is not 2040, that future is probably 2050. VPRA hopefully will continue to expand, and once it gets out to Gainesville, it's a nice connection front Loyal where we could turn the corner and have passenger train service right down to JMU Harrisonburg. So it's a good deal for us at that point. You all approved an amendment to our budget to accept that money from the CTB and then pass it on to this Battlefield Foundation. Unfortunately, when it went to the CTB, they made a change and they said, look, if there are other foundations or other people that think they can do similar, make similar progress, the area you should do a competition and determine which of these proposals is best. CTB asked us to do a competition. That goes against our bylaws, our rules. It wouldn't be a competition, especially since we're about 90% done with the agreement with the Battlefield Foundation. So at the next CTB meeting, CTB called it back and said, you know what, we're going to continue with the public process. We're going to have VDOT have public meetings, have the community's input, and then determine the path forward. That path forward may continue to be giving the money to us and going to the foundation. It may be another path forward, but the CTB and VDOT are currently deciding that. The bottom line is we don't have this line item in our budget. We never accepted the money, and we'll see what the CTB does. We still feel very strongly that that is a good future opportunity for passenger rail. The legislation that the General Assembly passed on this corridor said you need to not preclude future rail use, so we feel like it's protected. But we, VPRA, are in a waiting mode. And I wanted to update you folks because we had voted for the budget amendment. You likely read the budget and said, hey, where's that amendment? And so we're waiting for those public meetings to continue. They've had 3 so far. I believe the third one was the last week of April. We're waiting to see next steps from CTB and VDOT. So that is the update. Any questions on that? Yes.
Yeah, could you explain the CTB vote? Because I understand it was the chairman of the CTB who had to break it because it was tied, correct?
That is correct.
So do we know why the CTB was unwilling to go forward, or what was the divide, or what was the pro and cons?
I think there were, and this is my personal opinion, I'm not speaking to VPRA. There were a lot of folks that felt like there should be a competition. And then there were a lot of folks that felt like, well, no, this company, this foundation has been around a long time. They were created to do just this, and they're going to get the communities what they want. But as I think everyone saw, there were a lot of public comments, and the public was concerned that they wanted to get a trail with a rail component would be very expensive. And I think there were members of the public that didn't think it could be done. And that's really what caused the difference of opinion.
If I may, DJ, since I was at that CTV meeting, a big point that the secretary was making in that meeting is that I think there had been an earlier commitment that VDOT was going to do public hearings and there would be a public process to get input. That process didn't really happen because things moved more quickly. And so the secretary, I think, has consistently made it clear of he is not opposed to this project moving forward, but he is opposed to not doing public engagement. And so it was really to say, let's take a break. Let's ensure that the public participation process that we committed to as a state previously does play itself out. And then we can come back after that process has happened to determine the pathway to move forward. And so it really was, I think, some members of the CTB felt like we should just move forward, like time is of the essence, let's go quickly. Others felt like, nope, that makes sense. We should honor the commitment that we previously said as a Commonwealth we would do to have VDOT do those hearings. And again, I think feeling like that was VDOT's commitment and responsibility earlier. So it made more sense for VDOT than VPRA to be the lead for doing that since that was in place. And so that was, I think, some of the tension I picked up in that meeting was like, should we keep moving forward or should we pause for public involvement? The public involvement process, they have had several meetings and that is going to be moving forward. So I think everyone shares a desire to make sure that process plays out, not delay things forever, to make a decision to come forward and move that. So I know VDOT and the secretary are tracking this all pretty
Well,
closely.
that's good to hear, because that was one of the reasons I couldn't vote for it. It just came up so quickly, and the local elected officials were completely blindsided by it, and, they wanted the process to continue. So that's good to know. So thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, update on our FY26 organizational goals. We're going to talk more about this later, but we continue to be on track for ridership and revenue, even with the service reductions. We found that the trains are really, really crowded. I'd love to say that that's all because of the great work that VPRA is doing, and look, VPRA, the team is doing great work, but a lot of that has to do with gas being over $4 a gallon, and people don't want to spend money on gas, so they're more likely to take the train. Historically, you'll find that as gas prices go up, train ridership goes up as well. But ridership and revenue, we're still in really good shape, even with good service. Long Bridge continues to move forward on schedule. You see, we pretty significantly hit and exceeded a lot of those goals. As you go across the river, either on the train or in your vehicle, you can see we are moving quickly, and it's exciting to see. We've got a lot more videos and pictures coming up later. Key milestones for other projects. We talked previously about the bypass challenge, and we have made the determination that we are not going to have the Shoofly subbase completed by August. We've had some delays because of utilities, and we'll talk more about those later as well. There's, in particular, a jet fuel pipeline that goes along that, and we've been struggling with CSX and with the Kinder Morgan to get that moved. We feel like we have broken that log jam and we are moving it forward quickly, but with the time we've lost, we are working with the contractor to try to mitigate some of that 10-month loss. But there's not ability for us to get that August date. So we are going to miss that goal. Thankfully, we did get the fourth track construction started, and we did get Franconia to Lorton, or we're on track to get Franconia to Lorton bid out by the end of August. Those are in good shape. And then the other update is the platform for New River Valley. That concrete will not, the pouring has started, but it will not be completed by the end of June. That was a pretty aggressive date. The good news is we're still on schedule to start service in 2027. That schedule is not changing, but we're not going to get that done. So there's one where we made an aggressive goal. We tried to push ourselves. We tried to push Norfolk Southern. We didn't hit it. So that's another one we're going to miss.
DJ, just real quick, the concrete pouring is delayed, but final project isn't delayed.
We were hoping, yes, let me answer your question. Yes, we started the concrete pouring. It will not be completed by June. June was a very aggressive date. Norfolk Southern didn't expect to get it done by then, but we were trying to have them get it done. They said it was a possibility. Now it's not a possibility. Total project is still right on schedule. The project end date is right on schedule, and getting service started right on schedule. Mike, you looked at me funny.
No.
Okay, good. All right, so that's where we are at 26 organizational goals. We've actually started with our staff pulling together what the 27 goals are going to look like. And as we've done in the past, we'll bring those to you in the August. Any questions on goals? Okay, here's where I'll start to go very quickly. Passenger service updates continues to be good news. The ridership, as we saw in January when we changed to buses, you see the ridership went down, but it continues to be on track with what we've seen in the past. The buses have been really a big success. They were so successful, in fact, that after January came, we had people in Richmond saying, hey, we want a bus too. So we added 2 buses in Richmond. They are very well utilized, highly utilized. So that's a good news story. Here, you see the ridership for the 4 different routes. And then in the bottom right, you see the express bus ridership pretty much as expected or higher than expected. So we're continuing to move forward. It's broken down route by route. You've got all this information. No real surprises from what you've seen in the last couple months in the EPRA. Additionally, in the interest of not being repetitive, Ash Sweeney on our operation services team is going to do a presentation that what we looked in the stores like called the Jeremy presentation. Jeremy's not available, so Ash Sweeney's going to step in. She's going to do a great job. And here you see a little more about the buses. You see the ridership on the buses. So you see how we're doing. The big story is that just like you've seen over the last few years, our ridership per train out there is higher than the states that we compare ourselves to. So it continues to show that in Virginia, people, if you've got a train, people get on it. Really is positive towards when Long Bridge is done. When we go from what's currently 6 trains to 13, you're going to see these ridership numbers continue to pop. Customer service standards, this continues to be watched by all of the other states because we're the only state that has the customer service standards agreement with Amtrak. As the chart on the bottom shows you from the beginning of time, and then it goes down as time has progressed. You see the first line across, the number of reds versus the number of greens is very high. Now we've got all the greens except for 1. So it shows that the Amtrak folks are paying attention to it and they're scoring high, which means that our customers are getting the service that they're paying for in the states. Finally, cost recovery, we've talked about this the last couple of months. 94% is incredibly high. We're with it, but it's artificially high because last year when we finished the year, our capital project allocation allocates way too much to capital, and we're going to fix that, and you'll see it fixed in the budget. With the changes in service, we're looking at between 65 and 67%, we'll guess, but again, we'll talk more about that. So a little bit more of it. Operations budget, quickly, everything's in pretty good shape. No big surprises here. I'm happy to answer any questions if folks have them. And then here's the operations by route through March, because we're still the 21st. We don't have the final April data. Okay, capital project updates. I'm going to turn it over to Mike, but we've talked a lot about the rapid pace with which we are moving forward. You see the picture here. This is of Long Bridge North. That's the trestle that's being built over the Washington Channel. Our internal team, this is just folks that are VPRA employees. I said, it'd be nice to show the board a video. And I said this like on Friday afternoon at 2:00. And Monday they said, hey, take a look at this and see if you like it. Yeah, it's your performance time here. It's really good. Yes. It's all internal, literally done over a weekend, or they look pretty tired on the phone. But just a quick video showing some of the progress and we'll turn So there's just a quick look at some of the construction progress that we're making across the Commonwealth. It is amazing, and I've said this before. I was out at the Franconia Springfield bypass site yesterday. That video was taken probably 3 weeks ago, and just the difference in the site yesterday compared to that over 3 weeks is impressive. So, with that, any questions on the video? I guess if not, I'll turn it over to Mike, and he can answer more questions project by project. Okay.
I have no questions on the video, but I do just want to note, so for just DRPT and VDOT, along with CTV members, we're doing our district hearing. And there have been a lot of compliments to VPRA that have come up, particularly those we had in the New River Valley. Folks very excited about that progress and the pace of the construction that's underway. Folks very excited about Roanoke and the station redevelopment opportunities around there. And so it's just been exciting, whether it's been in Hampton Roads or out in Roanoke or Stanton or other parts around the state, where folks are really watching what's happening and are excited about that work that's underway. So just wanted to relay that and kind of report from the field as we've been talking about. So
Good to be here. Thank you. Mike.
Thank you. We, as DJ said, we are consistent with our EDR every month. We put it on our website. But when we have board meetings, we also have construction update reports. So I'm going to skip through a lot of these because some of the good folks in the back of the room are going to come up in a little bit and discuss them. I do want to point out, though, we have been having Long Beach public meetings. It's been well received. And we are honest when we're out there. We tell them what we can and can't do. And that has been well received out there in the area. One thing I do want to point out came up in the finance committee meeting. Our chair did ask about our spend to date. We didn't have the data right in front of us at the finance committee meeting. As you can see, we've already spent on Long Beach North $275 million. Now, a lot of that is the activities you see in the water. Also, you have things like insurance and bonding and mobilization payments that are big upfront payments that are being made. But these numbers are a lot bigger than they were in previous years. So I just want to point that out because this did come up at the finance committee meeting. So thank you. Next slide. And again, for all these, we're going to have construction update reports also with some videos to show you in a few minutes. Along Bridge South, the big part here is test piles that we're going to show you a video on in a little bit. And again, you see that actual 81 million spent on Long Bridge South, again, being I mentioned Long Bridge North earlier. That's the work at Main Avenue. This is the work over the Potomac. Alexandria Fort Track, again, we'll cover this in the construction update report. But this is the area from just about a half mile south of here, Seminary Yard, near Seminary Yard and Telegraph Road, all the way up to where Long Beach begins at the Aquatic Center. And these numbers, I should keep in mind, are from March. A lot of activity happening in April and May. So these numbers will look a lot higher. And I think is the next one, the King and Commonwealth. I can guarantee you more than 2.6 million has been spent. For anyone who's looked out the window and seen the construction cranes in Dallas, you can confirm that this is numbers from a couple months ago before the big construction activities have happened. Next slide. The bypass, we're going to talk about this again later on today. Again, also 109 million spent this year to date. And this year meaning the fiscal year. So these are July 1st through the end of June. So we are coming up toward the end of the fiscal year. Next slide. Franco and Lurton third track. This is a project that will be going to procurement hopefully this summer. CSX will be releasing the procurement. So a lot of that money will be the 11.4 million spent so far is design money spent. CSX, we're working with CSX closely. This is intertwined with the Franconia Bypass project. Some construction activities have happened though up the area we call CP Beltway, which is north of the Franconia station. That CSX is basically laying the groundwork for some signal work that's happening. Signal towers that will be going up, and that if you ever take the train up, you'll see that work happening up in that area.
Michael, so CSX leading the procurement, would they be also providing the oversight?
We jointly provide oversight with them.
Doing it together.
We do it with them. Yes. New River Valley, again, we talked about, DJ already mentioned it, and Rob will be up here later to talk about that. I was out there a couple weeks ago, and before that, I was out there a couple months ago. It is amazing to see the amount of work that happens just when you go out every month or two. A couple things I do want to point out here that are not in the construction updates report. These are two projects the Roanoke Yard project is a project that has to happen for service to happen to River Valley. We need to fix the work. We need to get a mainline track through Roanoke Yard. So that is a project that we need as a precursor to, and that will be finishing up. We believe later in 2026 timeframe. Rob's in the back room nodding affirmatively yes. The other project, Noakesville at Calverton, is a 7-mile double track south of Manassas that provide a lot of fluidity between Culpeper and Manassas. That doesn't have to be done for the New River Valley work to happen, but still an important project. Next slide. Rob's going to talk about the siding projects, especially D, E, F, and C. Siding A, though, is a project that's going first. And for those projects for people that just conveniently for me happen to be sitting next to each other, I do want to let you know that Leland Road is going to go under the knife and be taken out of service starting in the February, March timeframe.
The actual road, not the train station.
Yeah, the actual road, not the train station, yeah. And our director of planning, Christine Fix, has been meeting with the FAMPO technical advisory committees and others to let them know that to the various folks in the FAMPO area that road will be closed. There'll be detours and so on and so forth. And we'll continue to communicate to you about that. That, if people recall, the Leland Road Bridge in some ways is its own project. It's the same project, but we had to go out for a different procurement for the road work. Whereas we did the procurement for the road work and CSX is doing the procurement for the track work. Next slide. And again, these are siding projects. So this is all siding related to siding A. I mentioned the road work and kind of got ahead of myself already. So you have the track work, you have the Leland Road, and you also have, so in areas like Stafford and Fairfax, when the utilities need to move per their agreements with CSX, we are working with them and spreading and doing the work for them because we have the capability to do so they can continue to do what they need to do. And they're paying us back for this. This is money they're paying us back for. And that's also the case in Fairfax County as well. And again, Rob's going to talk about all these sidings further down. So not trying to skip over them, but we are going to cover these.
And are those all CSX? I guess my question is for these procurements, if CSX is handling the procurement, so do they use audited FRA rates or how, or I've never done a commercial procurement with a freight rail company, but how does that?
I do want to point, so we do all the environmental work and a lot of the public relations and all that work. So we're very intertwined with CSX. So CSX does go to their bench for design work. And then they put out
So that's like a commercial.
Yeah, they do a contract.
So it's like a commercial contract that you get.
And we notify the board before CSX. And we're going to talk about that later on today with Franconia Lorton. Jeff's going to talk about that, how they're going out, and we're going to be keeping you informed. When these get to the point of going into construction, we're going to be updating you more and more. All these projects here are just entering 30% design. These siding projects. Now, if your question is, this says, yes, CSX will release the procurement for construction once we reach a certain level of design on the project.
But to answer the question more directly, so
Yeah, so I'm just curious, how does that work with the FRA audit rates? Because yes.
So on some projects, if there's federal money, there are flow downs from the grant that CSX has to comply with.
Okay.
And if there's not federal money, then they don't. So we've got to watch that very closely. And that's
Yes.
when we talk about the budget, there's the fundability of the funds. You know, CSX obviously has a bunch of unions that work for them. So they've got agreements that they've got to comply with. So they really use that as their basis. But when there's federal money, they comply with all the federal law.
And there are some Amtrak money. Now, Amtrak's contributed $944 million. That's considered federal money. And that is on some of these projects, especially, I believe, like siding C, I believe, which is not it helps only Amtrak and freight trains. It doesn't down in VPRA territory. Projects like that might tend to have more Amtrak money. Next slide. Richmond area projects. The one I want to point out here is Richmond layover facility. We did receive $15 million from CVTA. Maria, I believe you were the first ones to let us know we received that money. Thanks to a gentleman from CTB as well, Mr. Davis, that helped us with that. And we're also applying, there'll be a slide later, some of these projects we are applying for federal money as well. And we're in the midst, we should find out in the next month or so on money for Richmond layover facility, for Stanton Station, and so on and so forth. Also do want to point out, as I pointed out in Finance Committee, that the Richmond to Raleigh grant has finally been obligated by FRA. North Carolina is lead on that. We are a joint applicant. But for projects like Max River Bridge, that actually is kind of a big deal because it's our first chance of getting a look at what the scope would be for the Max River Bridge. Right now, it's a single track. That's the only single track in a two-track area. It impacts Norfolk, it impacts trains down in North Carolina. So we have a staffer dedicated to working with North Carolina DOT and also the VDOTs of the world, because there's a lot of interface with I-85 especially in this area. So that's another one I wanted to point out in this page. So it's good news that that conceptual engineering, if you are, has been kicked off, and they have a deadline to finish by first quarter of 2027 with the conceptual engineering. So we can get a initial cost estimate of not just projects like Max River Bridge, but the whole 75 plus miles of Richmond to Raleigh S-Line project. Again, for those who aren't familiar, this would be more along the I-85 route. Currently, the route to Raleigh goes along 95, and it kind of cuts back northwest. It's not the most convenient route. This would make it more competitive with car travel. Slide. Other capital projects. L'Enfant's another one I want to point out. I know Dallas is here from VPRA. That is the last mile, if you will, of our dedicated 8 miles of passenger rail, 2-track passenger rail corridor. So that's a very important one that we need to finish. That even if Long Bridge and Alexandria 4-track are done and other projects are done, if L'Enfant project isn't done, we don't get to add go up to 13 Amtrak trains. We don't get to add weekend trains in VRE. And that is a project that has a lot of FTA money on it. VRE and Dallas were working on this before VPRA existed. And they have got to the point where they're in procurement. So we can't say too much about it, I think, right? Because we're in procurement. But do want to point out this is an important project moving far along. And as you can see, they have some proposals due later this month. Newington Railroad Bridge is a part of for our budget, we keep it separate, but it's going to be part of the Franconia Lorton procurement. And one we're working closely with VDOT and CSX on. I also already mentioned the Fairfax County Utilities, so thank you. And this is the summary. A lot of these numbers are already in the individual slides, so I'm just going to pass by. This is a summary of year-to-date actuals. Same with the Western Rail projects. Runway acquisitions, we talked to you about this a couple of years ago. We feel like we're at a good point here. We had the survey work from, that we did, which was different from the original valuation maps we had with CSX. So we trued up the corridor, if you will. So we feel a lot better about this now. We're in the midst of completing a lot of acquisitions. So when you get to that point, you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Next slide. So grant status update, you can see what is currently out there now. We did apply for 174 million for the Occoquan River 3rd track. That's not just the Occoquan River Bridge, it's 4+ miles of track as well. So up from almost Lorton Road all the way down through Woodbridge Station. This will give us money for design and for project development. So that's a big one. That'll be a big, Occoquan River Bridge itself will be a big bridge, but so will Route 1, Furnace Road. There's quite a few bridges in that. So if you're wondering why that's only for design, there'll be a $1 billion plus project. To be honest now, to do that 4+ miles plus quite a few bridges. Also, I'm not going to read all these. You see the build grants. We are applying for some of them in the same from different programs. We've been told in the past the FRA likes that flexibility, so they can mix and match what they need to do. Obligating the grants is important as well. As you can see, fortunately, our staff been working hard. We are more and more grants have been obligated. So this part should grow and this part should shrink as we move forward. I think we've gotten a very good cadence with FRA and their staff moving forward to obligating the grants.
Right, can I just one thing, that 729 million, that's a Fed state partnership money, right?
Yes.
And that's locked in, committed,
Obligated.
right? 100% ours.
Yes.
Notion of it not be going.
I talked to FRA last week. The gentleman I talked to, Deputy Administrator, says he loves seeing the work every time he goes over the bridges, whether it be in a train or a car. So obligated, we're all set there. That was money for phase 2 project. We elected to put it just on Long Bridge projects, is both north and south. But yes, that is money that's obligated and locked in.
It's off the federal books, it's on ours.
Well, no, we've not collected all of the money,
Okay,
but
It's reimbursed.
the FRA has it and we draw it down.
okay.
But the level, level of risk there is we're
Yeah.
trying to, because
Okay.
it's obligated and set aside. It's the unobligated ones are always at risk because Congress can make decisions. But once it's obligated, as long as you're continuing to comply with the grant agreement, you're in good shape.
Right, I mean, we just know that some of these, federal dollars are considering potentially being clawed back. As I know that Steve worked really hard, end of December to make sure it's obligated. I just want to confirm.
If that's confirmed, everything under the federal grants obligated fall into we've got a grant agreement, we've got it. And it's similar to, there have been other high profile projects where they had grant agreements and folks try to pull the money back and they went forward and said, no, you can't pull it back because this is a side agreement. So we feel comfortable. And especially since we're continuing to make progress, we're continuing to get deadlines and funding grants. So that stuff's low risk. The other stuff, we have no indication that it's at risk, but until it's obligated, you don't know.
Right.
Since you brought that up, I know there was a lot of press about a month ago where the president released the president's budget. That happens every year. Pretty low for transit, pretty low for public transportation. That's the first shot across the bow. That's nothing. It's obviously something that we're watching closely, but we're not concerned. Congress, House and Senate have a lot of work to do, but we're comfortable that the good projects that are moving infrastructure and transportation forward will be just fine. So nothing to be alarmed about yet, but we're watching.
Good to hear.
Thank you.
And then the only other thing, if I can butt in here, so continued butt in, I guess. Under a waiting obligation, the second one there is a $56 million grant that we received, a CMAQ grant, congestion mitigation. We came to the board last year and asked you all to give me the authority to enter into an agreement with DOT to have that grant agreement signed. Unfortunately, when you all approve or give me the authority, I have that authority for 90 days and the final negotiations have taken longer than 90 days. So what we're asking for today is to have you reauthorize that authority and give me that. And spoiler alert, we'll talk later about the bylaws. The bylaws very clearly say when you give me authority, I get it for 90 days. We're going to ask you later to extend that time. But for right now, what we're hoping you'll do is make a motion and give me the authority to once again enter into agreement. We think it's going to come within the next few weeks. It's going to come within the next few weeks, I think. But we'd ask you extend that authority for.
My goodness, I made the announcement and then I didn't silence my own phone.
DJ on CMAQ, right? Is it is this something that we have to go to FHWA directly about, or is it that we have to, or is this the part of the state's apportionment that they get from the highway trust fund, and then we are going to use a part of what the state gets?
Yeah, so it's, well, Laura, if you want to say that.
Sure, it is part of Virginia's CMAQ apportionment.
Yeah.
And it was transferred from federal highway to federal rail, and now we're in the throes of that agreement with federal railway.
So just, and let me know if I'm jumping ahead too. So do we have to go to federal rail, and then do we have to go to the CTB to get this from the state's apportionment, and then it comes to the VPRA?
We did it that first.
Yeah.
The CTB provided that allocation
Got
to the
it.
project, and by that action started the pathway to move it from highways to rail.
Got it.
And now we're in the agreement stage.
That's a very good point. On that grants page, everything else from discretionary grants we apply for from the FRA or you, Office of the Secretary. The CMAQ grant is, as you mentioned, through the state apportionment. So it is slightly different, but one we still have to go through processes for.
If I could also just notice, if you go back one, I just wanted to flag the Richmond layover facility, I think it's the city of Richmond, correct? That's put that in for smart scale. So just the process for that's for smart scale 7, which are, those applications are currently under review and analysis. They're looking at the pre-application status now, and then VDOT would get back to applicants to let them know if they are invited to move forward to the next phase of the smart scale. That would come before the CTB for final consideration of smart scale projects that would be funded. I think that action happens in December for grants that would happen for next year. So just flagging that and that process that moves through. So that may also be something as hopefully it continues to move forward, that will be in discussion with CTP members to hopefully continue getting their support for the work.
How much are we seeking under smart scale for that project?
17.8 million.
Yeah, that's the balance
Okay,
that
state
we
grants,
need
okay.
is- And we've asked, if you can see on the chart, we've asked for that from a number of different places. So we've got an Amtrak commitment, we've got a CVTA commitment. We're looking to get that last piece of that project.
Yeah, and the Richmond Air Facility is important because we need a place to put the trains when we're done with Long Beach and other projects in the Richmond area. There are 3 or 4 trains or so, depending on what the schedule is, where they're layover overnight. We need a place to put those trains. There's not enough space at Staples Mill, and frankly, we're doing a deadhead move right now between through Aki Yard, which is not optimal.
And then I don't know for CMAC, do you want us to take action now or should we?
We would love that.
Okay.
We'll do that.
So could we get a motion from someone on the board to approve ratification to execute CMAC agreement and provide the executive director additional time to be able to ratify that with FRA?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. All right, anyone abstain? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
And again, this is the summary of the year-to-date work so far. A lot of this work is, we're going up yard, just one I pointed out, that is ongoing. If I don't know if it's on the spending money, so it takes that yard to get things moving out. We'll see those, a lot of these pick up in the next couple of years. And I think that's it for me. Hand it over to Laura.
Any questions for Mike on capital projects?
Just that it's, it is infrastructure week, right? And so it's nice to, see, I think, there are a lot of projects around the country that say people are still talking about building, and it's nice to see that here in the Commonwealth, we're actually getting to see the construction underway. So well done, Mike and team.
And the team, the credit goes, we're working, we all also got together, partners, we work with the Amtrak's, the VREs, the CSX, Norfolk Southern, so truly is a team effort. Thanks.
Okay. The first view is our collections of the Commonwealth Rail Fund. We still remain on target to meet the current year's revenue estimate. This is something I'm watching closely, just changes in driver behavior with gas prices, that this may be of concern that we watch through the summer if these higher prices continue and affects their behavior. So we're keeping an eye on this. Next slide. This just provides a view through March related to our investments and earnings. We've earned $20.5 million to date based on those investments. Next slide. Through April 30th, our gain of 1.9%, which is slightly lower than our gain we reported in our January meeting, but we still feel like that things are performing as they should. And with regard to liquidity and the balance of the investments, this just provides a view of where we are today and the makeup of that. Obviously, with the maturities in less than a year, this is something we'll be watching related to managing the resources available in the projects and their behavior, and where we'll be drawing against our investments outside of the LGIP versus here, and whether we need to rebalance this portfolio going forward. That's likely a summer activity this summer for Selma and Charlie and I. So we look forward to updates in this area. And this just provides a different view of the return through April.
Any questions on the financial stuff? We can understand it. We've got a big budget presentation later.
Laura, talking about the reallocation, are there places that you think about that you're thinking about, like, is it commercial paper, right? Of like getting smaller or getting larger, or some other kind of asset classes?
There's some potential there. We have some recommendations for meter to consider in the next couple of months, and whether we need to take advantage of some opportunities. So I think, yes.
Is it still governed by the same investment principles, right? There's no notion of changing those,
Of
right?
course, ma'am.
All right, administrative updates, just current staff count. We've got interns coming on board, which is always exciting. They serve as a good pipeline for future folks. And you see the interns listed there. We had one non-intern hire who starts next week, I believe, in financial planning and analysis. And then you see the interns there going forward. Here's a snapshot of our administrative budget. pretty much everything is in good shape.
PJ, just curious, what schools do those students represent?
Or I gotta have to pull it up. Later, I'll be reporting to the board for school.
That's a good question, though.
Yeah.
I'll get that. Say, I think they're all Virginia, but I'll get that.
Some of the gentlemen and the ladies in the back of the room, I think might have the information, so we might go to get that to you before the board meeting.
JMU and West Virginia University.
Say.
JMU, James Madison, and West Virginia University, the Alexandria intern.
Mine's unfortunately Florida, and she lives in French.
Now, are we able to take advantage of any of the intern funding that's available through the EDP?
I don't believe we've explored that. But
VTOP used to be VTOP.
Yeah, they
call it something else
They
now.
changed the name of, used to be the VTOP grants. But it is set up specifically for offsetting employer costs for hosting interns. Virginia has a target to increase the number of internships in all businesses.
They provide clothing allowances for professional attire, things like that. It's a nice
Travel.
Oh, wow. Yep.
on the list. Thank you. Here are the budget adjustments that were made in March. We just made a minor $30,000 change from IT services. Contracting updates here is anytime there's a contract over $5 million, we notify you all 5 days in advance. And then anything over 50, we bring to the board. Anything 250 or above, we just put in the EDR, and here is the list of those contracts. Okay, supplier diversity. We're going to be changing the way we update you on reminder. These are the categories that we track against. Yes, okay. So if I say something wrong, jump in. Here's our spending through the most recent quarter. You see we've got 4.78% of spend. Again, this is on the discretionary spend. We have a lot of non-discretionary spending. We've got to give money to CSX. We've got to give money to Norfolk Southern. We've got to give to Amtrak. So we don't have choices. But of the discretionary, we've got just under 5% of swing. This is below our goal. And the reason I said that there's going to be a change is there were recently laws passed that have made it different on how you can determine or make a determination that, yes, I'm a small business, yes, I'm a minority-owned business, female-owned business. You no longer can just say, this is me. You've got to actually prove where you've been disadvantaged. And so it changes the way we can procure folks. So we're going to, I said that right, Michael?
You're close, and we're going to talk about it more later. It's the federal designation that has changed.
Yeah. So there you go. So we're going to talk about it during Michael's legislative review, but we may see differences on how this is reported going forward because of those changes. And absent questions, I yield my time.
Thank you.
Any questions?
All right, well, we will move forward to item number 8 then, construction updates.
So really just an opportunity for me to tee up some of the folks in the back of the room to come up. And most of these folks should be familiar. I know Charlene Clayton will be here today. She is taking another important meeting we have. So Ian Langan, who was one of our Long Beach leads, will be here, and so is Jeff Peltier. So with that, I'm gonna let them have the podium.
Good morning. We'll jump right in. Did you need to say anything about this, Mike? Or?
This is just a good summary of the projects. So we report on projects that are under construction here. So, and as you can see, I'm very happy to say we have a lot of them. So, and again, some of these numbers are very similar to what we just showed them in VPRA.
All right, we'll jump right into Long Bridge North. All right, so we've had a lot of exciting activity going on the project. We'll get into the listed activities here in a second. But first, I want to remind you of the phasing that we're using to achieve the project here. And in the project map, if I can make my pointer work. Maybe not. Okay. Railroad North is the top right of the screen. Railroad South, obviously, to the bottom left. So phase 1 looks to build out a temporary alignment on the western side of the corridor in order for us to, at Main Avenue, start disassembling the bridge. So you'll see a lot of photos of that here coming up, but that's the what we're after for phase one. Phase two then shifts to the east side of the alignment, and there are several activities that SFJB, Skanska Flatiron, is advancing in phase two as well. Before we leave this slide, we'll call your attention to the upcoming activities. We don't have any photos of these, but in a very short time, a matter of weeks, we are going to make a major maintenance of traffic shift on Main Avenue. Currently, we're in the northern maintenance of traffic area. We're going to make a shift to the southern, and that's all for the phase one work at Main Avenue. And really, that shift allows other upcoming activities, including retaining wall G and the abutment at Main Avenue to take place. All right, so getting into the activities, you see on the left-hand side, that is crash wall D on the very left, or crash wall C rather, that's early works package 4. And on the right-hand side, that's crash wall D and F. That was an early works package that was completed last year. And this bay underneath Maryland Avenue overbuild is where the temporary alignment of track 3 will shift from the right side of crash walls D and F, and we'll end up in this bay here. So we're ready to construct track here on the northern portion of phase 1. So that's a great news story here. And then you also see Skanska Flatiron's field offices located in East Potomac Park. Those were completed, and everybody's moved into that facility.
Even if I can, across Wall C, isn't that where East Traffic used to be? And it belonged that way?
Correct. There was a stub track that was used for storage that ran in this area. We demolished that track in order to make room to make these accommodations. Again, the Maryland Avenue overbuild, we had to do this crash wall work, right? We had to bring up the crash wall, strengthen them in order to protect the structure overhead, right? So next, we recently completed CSX duct bank. There is a duct bank that runs through the alignment that holds 5 fiber tenants. This is located up in the right-of-way, and what we're doing here is relocating it to a place where we can then further deconstruct the right-of-way and then build out new infrastructure. So the right-hand picture here is the connection of the existing CSX duct bank to the new alignment. All right, and then on the far side, you see this in East Potomac Park, just adjacent to the old National Park Service headquarters. This is where it'll actually jump into another duct bank and temporarily run underneath Washington Channel. Again, this is very important for us to start taking down old infrastructure, right? While we have completed a section of this, there's more to come north of here in order to completely get this out of the way. All right, next, I'll call your attention to the left-hand photo there. That is the Maryland Avenue overbuild and the crash walls that we saw about 2 slides ago. Again, this is phase 1 construction. We've completed the northern portion inside the overbuild, and we're working our way south, right? The construction you see in both of these photos is actually retaining wall L construction along the western side of the corridor, and that's going to support temporary track 3, but it will end up being the permanent track alignment. So we need to get this retaining wall in place in order to build track on top of it. Then you see on the right-hand picture, but in the left corner, that's Main Avenue. It's what we call Maiden Lane, where they're working on the foundation elements, Maiden Lane. So that is that northern phase of the maintenance of traffic scheme. There's a cast in place section on the left-hand side, and then this is a drilled shaft post and panel wall on the right-hand side. All right. Activities I talked about were phase 1. This is SFJB pulling activities in phase 2 forward where they're able to. This is supportive excavation work at Ohio Drive. They're doing this on the east side of the alignment again. They'll build out this wall, this temporary wall to support the embankment, and then begin the bridging foundations behind it. Next, we see the Washington Channel trestle. DJ touched on it a little bit earlier and gave you a different vantage point. This is very important because once we move into that maintenance of traffic south area along Main Avenue, this trestle will actually feed the job, right? So equipment and material that are sizable that we don't want to bring in by road on Main Avenue and further create congestion on the roadway, we're going to bring in separately through National Park Service land, bring it across the Washington Channel and land in the marina, the former Washington Marina parking lot. We recently Amtrak actually was recently able to acquire that property. So we are now able to fully build out the trestle into that parking area, which is lining up perfectly with this traffic shift in Main Avenue.
May I ask a quick question? What happens to that after?
It'll be removed.
The what?
It'll be removed.
Okay.
This is temporary, right? Temporary for 5 years.
And can you just give me coordinates on that? That's coming from north side, built out south?
We're starting in East Potomac Park, which would be the southern end, and working our way across the channel, working our way north.
Okay, thank you.
That's on the marina there, right?
Yes, that's correct. The boats in the marina.
Ohio Drive is where a lot of people park for cherry blossoms on the right-hand side is Ohio Drive. There's some tennis courts over there, golf courses over there, just off on the right-hand side.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
And then we move into Main Avenue foundation construction. On the left-hand side, you see here 2 micro piles are in place, and then the pile cap, right, which is the beginning to really come out of the ground for the foundation at Main Avenue. So again, I told you we're working in the northern maintenance of traffic area. This is that work that's taking place, building out the northern abutment, and Pier 2, we shift south. That's our opportunity to start to do the same work, but for Pier 1 and the southern abutment. All building out the area where we can then shift the track to the west and then start disassembling this existing bridge. This is the critical path of Long Bridge North. All right, any other questions on north or south? All right, so right now, the Long Bridge Rail Partners, which is the tri-venture of Trumbull, Fay, and Wagman. Right now, they're engaged in their test pile program. They have completed the test piles out on the water. We'll see some of that activity in some short videos here in a moment. They have built out their marine access bulkheads, which is allowing them to walk equipment on and off the water. And then upcoming work that we don't have photos of, they're going to start construction of the rail bridge, both on the Virginia side and the DC side in short order. Once those are constructed, we do have a time of year restriction through July. Activity on that production pile driving in the water will start in earnest after that. All right, so those recently completed activities. On the left-hand side, you see the Gravelly Point laydown area. In this area, the Mount Vernon Trail also runs, and we are realigning that trail. It's heavily utilized by the biking community. We need to make a shift so that everybody can exist in the same area safely.
And to get everyone's orientation, if you're coming north on 395, you want to go to the airport, you're taking Boundary Channel Drive, look to your left, that's a perfect view of this. So it's in that area where, so 395, see WMATA Bridge, just beyond that 395, but again, Boundary Channel Drive is just to the west of this. This is north of National Airport.
And then on the right-hand side, you see that bulkhead has been constructed. You see the WMATA yellow line in the background. It's the Virginia shore. On the right-hand side is the existing Long Bridge. Here, they've got a crane that recently completed the test pile and is actually walking off the water. They are currently reassembling the same crane on land in order to perform the land side test pile. All right. Actually, a short time ago, they completed, so it's no longer ongoing, but completed this obstruction probing. There is existing scour protection in the river bottom, which are just sizable rocks that exist around the existing piers. That's put in place to ensure that during flood conditions, the foundation isn't undermined. So some of that, based on some of our survey work, look to be in the pathway of our pile layouts for the rail bridge. We have determined that those obstructions are not in our way, which is a very big win for the project. And then on the right-hand side, you see them finishing off the water test pile for the rail bridge.
And these are both taken from the DC side. So this is near NPS Park headquarters.
And how close is that, you know, where the testing structure is there? How close is that to the alignment, the ultimate alignment of the bridge?
These are, well, I'll say the obstruction probing actually took place where the final alignment will be. The test pile performed in close vicinity within 30 feet or so, right? We get enough data by doing that to really be able to project that across the river.
I'm Jeremy Rogers with the Long Bridge Rail Partners. We are here for our test pile program. This is our 36-inch test pile. What we're doing is driving this pile to make sure that all of our engineering assumptions are accurate for the depth of the pile and the capacity of the pile. We are also checking, we'll be monitoring sound. So how much noise is traveling through the water when we're doing the activity. And we're also going to be checking seismic activity on the river bottom while we do this to also make sure that that data corresponds with what the assumptions were made in our engineering. So after this pile is driven, we get a lot of data gathered from that. Then there is another test we do to this pile, is a statnamic test. And what that does is it pushes a lot of force into the pile, and we get data from that force activity that says, hey, this pile has this amount of capacity, which again is very key to proving all of our engineering.
Here. This is the test that statnamic test rather that Jeremy referred to. We've got one more video.
Oh. Okay.
You're all on the same line, right? We had our first statnamic test go off here a short time ago. Everything went well, went off safe. Next steps are to take the data back to the office and analyze it and determine our true pile capacity.
That's a statnamic test. We've performed 2 of those in the water so far. We've got 2 more to go, both on lakeside, one on the Danish shore and one on the seashore. A lot of effort went into communicating with the greater community about what was going to take place.
Yeah.
This is a controlled explosion.
It's a small.
We do have the Pentagon in close vicinity here, and I'm sure that we're reaching out to them.
Yeah, we actually, Ian, sorry to interrupt, but we do a lot of public meetings, community meetings, and we had one a couple weeks ago, correct me, but Naomi, who's on our team, was speaking there. And said, look, this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to be. And they just, a standing ovation basically for her honesty and just her candor. And it was people that were there like, I've never seen a public meeting like this. It's really been a good experience. Communication team did a great job.
All right, having questions on this. That's clearly testing something for capacity or what are we testing by?
We're ensuring that our assumptions for pile size and length, the foundation elements that will go into the river bottom are correct.
By a mini explosion?
Yes, so they're sending force down into the pile, right? And they've got gauges on the pile that are able to read what the capacity of the pile is based on that.
To take the force?
So basically I've got a wall and I think that wall can withstand a 30-mile-an-hour thing. So if you punch it at 29 miles an hour, it doesn't break, you feel good.
So we're not testing to failure, we're testing to somehow within our calculated capacity.
Correct.
Okay.
Had you done that?
Yeah, you did great. All right, one more for South here. Again, I touched on the Mount Vernon Trail realignment. This is a graphic that depicts what will happen. This hatched area is our work zone. You see the red existing path running right through it. In order to safely maneuver in this area, we needed to relocate the trail. The relocated trail will actually hug the George Washington Memorial Parkway and will sneak underneath the bridge just adjacent, the existing just adjacent to the parkway. Obviously, pretty impactful work. This was scheduled to happen in late May, but now with the weather actually this weekend, we're anticipating it'll push into early June. Any other questions?
Do we have all our funding sources for north or south identified? Does that include the PTA money?
I don't believe it's the SAT.
There's no PTA money in either north or south?
I don't believe so. I think that would be from this.
Okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Board. My name is Jeff Peltier. I'm Senior Director for Engineering and Construction, Northern Virginia. We're going to continue our march south and hit on Alexandria 4th track. Certainly not as glamorous as its neighbor to the north at Long Bridge, but no less important. This is where we're picking up where Long Bridge leaves off, building out the 4-track corridor, another 6 miles down into Alexandria. We're building this. This is really the busiest, most congested rail segment in Virginia. This is where the 5 tracks come together, the tracks from south and Richmond and Fredericksburg meet up with the tracks from out west, Roanoke, Lynchburg, and Manassas. So we've been under construction with CSX in the lead since January. And we're going to continue doing this really for the next 18 months to 2 years to get it done. The work that we've been doing in the last few months has really been involved in getting our site set up, access, staging, those sorts of things. With CSX's contractor, they have a site contractor, Fay S&B, that is doing the work, and then CSX is also self-performing some of that work. The work that we're focusing on right now is that we have 3 control points or areas where we have switches, crossovers, signals to move trains around in the corridor. One is at the very north, where Long Bridge is, called the RO interlocking. There's another one right about the midway point in Alexandria called Slayer's Lane. There's another one at the end called the AF interlocking. So we've been working on the RO interlocking and Slayer's Lane control point. There's a lot of work that's going on just to set up that track, set up the track that's going to be coming in and get it ready for 4-track operation. And once those control points are done later this year, we'll start marching the 4th track down from Arlington into Alexandria. We are still working on utilities in the Alexandria corridor, as Ian alluded to earlier. There are 5 different fiber optic utilities that are along this corridor that are in different places. And what CSX has done over the last 2 years, they've built a common duct bank, as you saw in Ian's photo, and have been wrangling those 5 fiber optic tenants to actually get into that common duct bank so that we can build our track. Right now, where those fiber optic lines are where we're planning to put in infrastructure. And it has been a challenge. We've got all that duct bank in place, the cable is pulled, Just the last piece that we need to do is actually splice the new cable into the system and turn it on. It's called cutover. We were planning to do that by the beginning of this year, but then the conflict in the Middle East happened, and the federal government, Department of War, said no cutovers. We're not taking any fiber optic out of service. You need to wait until things have cleared up. And we've actually just started the cutovers again this past month. They started at the beginning of May, and they're going to continue through the end of the summer. Just a couple of photos of what's been going on. I mentioned this is RO, so that's the Longbridge Aquatic Center that you see on the left there. There was some out of service track that we've demoed out. We started getting that ready to go. And on the right, you just see some of the work we have to do just to get the site ready to bring in all these prefabricated track panels that are assembled in plants off site. They're brought in by rail, and then they're assembled on site. And this, again, you see some of these pits that we've been doing to, figure out where the existing fiber optic and utility lines are. Those are all getting moved into a conduit that's on the other side of the tracks. And that's all a process, like I said, that's been ongoing. And then over here, you also see some additional signal work that's going on. This is the work at Slater's Lane. Again, not the most glamorous stuff in the world. It's track, but it's also being done under the existing freight and passenger traffic, right? So again, most congested segment of track in Virginia, anywhere from 50 to 80 trains a day. We have to maintain that traffic while we're doing this work. Some of it's happening at night, some of it's happening on the weekends and whatnot. So it's very important that we get it done when we can. And just off to the right, as I mentioned, these are some of the right-of-way acquisitions we did for the project to get staging. This is off in Alexandria. You can see just very far into that photo is the Potomac Yard Metro Station. This is an area of land that the city jointly operates with Metro, and we've been able to use it as well. So some good partnership going on there between all the organizations. Okay, Alexandria Station Improvements, King Commonwealth Bridges project. This is probably our most advanced project in the Northern Virginia area. I think we've explained it many times before. We have multiple projects that are just across the street from us here. In fact, if you're listening carefully, there's that ringing noise that's in your ear. That is the sweet sound of a vibratory impact pile hammer. Only an engineer could love, but it's progress. And you're welcome to at some point today. You can go out and see the work that's been going on. The 3 cranes that are out there. It's been great to see, and we're really moving forward with VPRA in the lead. So as we've mentioned many times before, we combine the bridge project with the Alexandria Station Improvements project. VPRA and Dallas's team is in the lead with Kokosin Construction Company doing that work. This is a very challenging project, a lot of work that has to get done in a very tight corridor. And not only that, it starts off hard. It's not one of these projects that kind of builds up to a crescendo of work. It starts off with some of the hardest work right up front. And that's what we've been doing over the last few weeks here, doing the jump span work, which I'll show a few photos of here in a minute. In the last few months, the contractor Kokosin, they've mobilized in at the old parking lot, the gravel parking lot right next to Alexandria Station. It's called the Callahan Yard now. We've taken it over for lay down and office space. We did a great job with us, VPRA, negotiating with the city of Alexandria. They used to use this as a parking lot for their city vehicles. They've actually been able to move off site. And we're using it now for the project. And then you see here all the work that we're doing in a very tight space, 3 very large cranes, some of the biggest cranes you'll see in the region doing this work. And it's again, just wonderful to see and hear. I mentioned challenging work up front. I actually briefed this at the board meeting back in January. What we need to do, again, to keep building this work while maintaining all the rail traffic that we have in the corridor, we essentially have to build the bridge while it's still operating. So what we do is this is a practice under the banner of what we call accelerated bridge construction, or ABC. We're building these things called jump spans. And what the jump span is essentially extending the bridge, building a bridge behind the bridge, and creating the space to build the new foundation for the new bridges. So we essentially create this new span, excavate it out, and you start building that foundation behind the existing bridge while the existing bridge is still in service. And we have to do this at 3 locations for all 3 tracks in the area. So there's 9 different jump spans that have to get built, and we do them over the course of 3 different weekends. We started the first one at the beginning of the month. That took, I think the outage started on a Friday. We went into a Wednesday morning. We have the next jump spans that are starting next weekend on track 2. And then track 1 will be 2 weeks after that in the middle of June. But so many activities that have to happen in such a short space of time to make the jump spans go into operation. I'll just go through a couple of photos of the work that has to happen. CSX comes in, shuts down the track, actually cuts the track out and removes it. The contractor Kokosing comes in and starts putting in these sheet piles, which is what you're hearing getting driven right now, which is supports all of the earth that supports the track. And then over here, you see some cylindrical or circular piles that are actually supporting the beams for the jump span. Those have to get driven in as well. And we're under some pretty strict requirements from the city on noise. They have to be done during daytime hours. They have to really short window to get all these piles done in time at 3 different locations per weekend. You see again here where the track was actually cut out and the area is getting prepared. See more of that. Those the sheet piles right here getting vibrated in place, and then the cylindrical piles that the beams go on, those get cut off to get that span going. These are the actual jump span beams that were getting installed. Once they're installed, backfilled, put into place, CSX then comes back and puts that track section that they cut out back on top of the beams and gets the track in service for the next morning. This is what it looks like after it's done. You see, you wouldn't even know the difference, but that's the beam that we just showed with the new track on top of it. And we were running VPRA and Amtrak trains the next morning on that Wednesday. I also mentioned too, we are under a mandate from the FRA to keep 2 boarding edges at Alexandria in play or operable at all times. So we've built out a new platform at track 1, which was previously really never used at Alexandria Station. So now we have an ADA accessible platform, and we're able to use track 1 now when we take the various tracks out of service when we're putting these jump spans in place. So it's been a great operation, a ton of work going on, still a lot left to do before June. And then we can actually start building the new bridges and start building the platform as well. I think that's it for Alexandria, but I did want to pass to Dallas, if you wanted to add any comments to that.
I would love that. Thank you. And yes, you could hear the hammer a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
I'll point out to sort of repeat, but 83 trains a day roughly. And if you do that, and so between the noise restriction at night and 83 trains a day, that doesn't leave a lot of time to build things, right? So it's a very complicated dance that we do. Back to the 4th track for just a moment, the 2 diamonds on that, the VRE stations within the footprint of the 4th track. The nature of this, it's a very complicated choreography between projects, and a delay in their project could have a benefit to ours and vice versa. Like it's this weird sort of thing where there's things that we have to do first before they can come, or things that they have to do before us so we can come. And so when any one of those things gets off, it can complicate things even more. So for instance, the fiber optics and things that we're dealing with there, we have laydown areas where those fiber optics have to go, handholds for those fiber. So it's very complicated. I applaud the VPRA team. We've been working very closely together with them and will continue to work very closely together with them. Having these baseline schedules are very important, and working together, very important. So, yeah, let's keep it up. And coming with this big outage coming in next week is our next opportunity to see.
Shout out to Amtrak, working closely with them to make sure the operations continue. A lot of changes for passengers the past few months, and you will see VRE employees out there. Some of us will often go out and train early and help people out. Amtrak has had people out on the platform for every train that's out there, whether it's VRE or Amtrak. So kudos to another good team effort. I'm sorry I cut off.
That's it. The one bridge is right up here, right?
They're both right.
They're both right there. Yeah.
A few hundred
So
yards apart. Yeah.
are those roads closed then?
During the outages, and only during the outages, right? So when we do these jump span installations 2 weeks ago, we took out King and Commonwealth Streets both. And that is the complicated nature of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the proximity of these 2 bridges and the track geometry, you can't do them separately. They have to all be surfaced and lined all at the same time. It's very complicated. We literally built 3 bridges in 5 days. And then turn around 2 weeks later and do it again. And then turn around 2 weeks later and do it again. And so it's like starting a marathon on the sprint, right? Literally. the, 800-yard sprint. So very, very difficult and very, very exciting.
I also mentioned too, Dallas, through the outreach effort has been great too.
It really has.
For that roadway closure, I thought it was gonna be traffic apocalypse here, and it wasn't. I mean, people knew what they.
It's kind of like, it's almost like it flows better. It might be better actually with.
Dallas that said.
But no, yeah, the outreach work between our two agencies especially has been one very, very good effort. And my project manager, Jason Boyd, had said it's been basically 2 nights a week. He's been at 2 evenings a week at the Rosemont or Crystal City, outreach to these community groups, working with Meredith and team. So it's been very, very good. One clarification, the requirement for 2 platforms at a time was not FRA, that was VRE. We said, you got to do this because we need to maintain service for both us and Amtrak.
Well, FRA liked it because they echo.
Yeah, they liked it, but we mandated that in the contract, two tracks and 2 platform edges and all.
Well, I would also just add, in addition to VRE and VPRA and Amtrak SEP, I just want to, we need to also acknowledge and thank the cities, our partners, because I think their staff, their elected officials, everyone, it really has been a full team effort. And I know they hear often first and foremost from citizens about things. And I think it's generally been a very positive and productive partnership between everyone with that. But I know, having just been with the mayor of Alexandria and others, I think I heard, again, generally positive things, but I know a lot of coordinated outreach and communication happening with that. So thank you to our local community partners.
Good point.
We can do this. And really, really, really would encourage folks, if you haven't had a chance, to just go across the street and look at this, because you can visually see it. Like, you don't need, sometimes to do things, you have to, get in some weird convoluted space, but like, you can literally just go to the Amtrak station or even on the metro, if you're taking the metro, and you can just look and see a lot of things that are underway. Exciting.
And you guys cannot work night.
So we can do certain activities at night, but much like the Long Bridge project, those activities are limited by city restriction,
Okay.
right? So the noise, it is real. I mean, you heard the staff, Dan, and even driving those piles, it's a very loud operation. You don't want to be doing that at 3 a.m, but there are certain activities we have to do at night that can only be done at night between trains. And so it's been very, very busy. But no, again, the prohibition of some activities at night and trains during the day, it does not leave a lot of time. Take the train.
I should also note we're building out some new crossings in the area as well to be able to move passenger traffic throughout the existing platform configuration. The ultimate goal of the project is to eliminate these crossings so you don't have passengers walking across tracks. We will have elevators when the project is done, but just for moving people in this temporary configuration for the next 2 years, we're building out some new crossings, both for people and for equipment. Okay, marching further south into the Franconia area, the Franconia-Springfield bypass continues. And as DJ mentioned, we've had some challenges with utilities. We are working through that right now, but there is still work that's ongoing. By the end of last year, beginning of this year, we acquired all the property that we needed for the project. We've built out all of our access to the site. I think I've mentioned it in the board meetings in the past. This is about as remote as you can get and still be in North Virginia. And it's a hard site to get to. You have to acquire property just to get to this site. We have our access built out, our staging built out, our contractors on site doing work. We have drainage that's underway. We have 2 retaining walls that are underway. We are fabricating. We're just about to start the order for structural steel up in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, to start doing the hundreds of pieces of steel that have to get built for the bridges. So there is still a lot going on. The thing that is kind of the long pole in the tent right now are utility relocations. We have 2 fiber optic companies that need to move. We have Verizon MCIs out there as we speak, relocating. Lumen's right behind them. And then Kinder Morgan with the jet fuel pipeline is going to take place starting this summer. So still a lot happening on the bypass, but we have run into some challenges on the utility side. And not the most exciting photos in the world, but these are critical to the project. This is a former Enterprise rent-a-car parking lot that we've acquired that is right on the tracks. The tracks are just to the left of that photo. This is just the best staging area and best access you can get to the corridor in the area. And actually, as DJ mentioned, looks totally different now than it does in that photo because we are building it up and putting drainage in that area and doing lots of good things. We also have crossings across that we're building for equipment across the existing tracks so we can keep the traffic of dump trucks and loaders and things like that. There's a lot going on in a really small area, and we've just been building that out over the last few months. And you see a little bit more of that access that we're building out. Again, this is, a corridor that hasn't been touched in 150 plus years. We're now making it accessible to build the bridge that we need to here. And then I mentioned we have 2 big retaining walls. The other thing we have to do is actually build out the space for the bypass bridge. It is a pretty tight corridor, and it's got some very steep slopes in some areas. So we're building some of these top-down walls. On the left, there's a soil nail wall where we actually start at the top. You inject these horizontal anchors, you put concrete face on them, and you actually start excavating down instead of building the wall up. So that's what we have going on right now. And as I mentioned, we have Verizon and MCI are out there right now doing utility relocations. Franconia Lorton third track, I know Mike mentioned it. We are not yet into full construction. CSX plans to procure their contractor later this year, but we have been doing some early work in this area. For the bypass, we actually have to remove and retire an interlocking switching area called Ravensworth Interlocking. So we worked a package with CSX to actually do that work early on in a place that's just north of the project, or just between the Beltway and Franconia Road. We're actually calling it Control Point Beltway for that reason. We've been building that out since last fall. So the site work happened last fall. Back in March, CSX did all the track work, and now they're working on the signals work, and we expect the signals to go into effect by the end of June. CSX has to do that work themselves. They have kind of roving crews that go around the country doing this signal work. It's scheduled, a year in advance, and we get on the calendar for June. So that's when they're going to be there. And this is just some of the work for that track work that happened back in March that was going on. As I mentioned, up in Alexandria as well, these panels come, and some of them get assembled on site, but a lot of them get fabricated off site, brought in on rail cars, put off to the side, then put into place. And I think we have a video here just showing some of the work that CSX forces do. This is where they're actually cutting out some of the existing track to make room for that special track work that's going in place. Like everything else we're doing, very busy corridor. We have to do this work at night when there's as few trains as possible. And this is actually the same group later on putting some of those track panels into place. As I mentioned, they've been prefabricated off site with some of the switching machines already attached. And they just lay them into place, get them set, put the ballast in place, and then weld the rails together.
And Madam Chair, if I may offer, one of the things that's been very good about this close coordination is, for instance, when we were out for a jump span, or when we will be out for a jump span construction at King Street, for instance, it affords CSX an opportunity to go do this sort of work at Slater's Lane. Right, so we're just sort of piling on one another and benefiting the projects. We're benefiting each other. A lot of close coordination required to do that.
Yeah, that's just a few still photos of what been going on. We've also been prepping for the utility relocations that are to come in Franconia. There's a lot of trees that had to come down. We have time of year restrictions on trees. The moratorium for tree clearing started on April 1st. We got a lot of our tree clearing done in February and March. And this, again, not a very glamorous photo, but it's a big milestone for us to be able to get the trees down for some of the Fairfax water utility relocations that we have to do right around the Franconia Springfield VPRA station. With that, we're going to march much further south and west to New River Valley.
Exactly. You stole my line then. So much further south and west.
Yeah. Question, did I understand you correctly? We have buy land for access to this?
We did, yes.
So who owns that? So I'm assuming we'll keep that access, right? Because
Some of it's temporary just for construction, and we'll return it back to the owner. Some of it is permanent. And in those cases, it actually depends on what side of the corridor it's on. So if it's on the part of the corridor that VPRA owns, we will keep it. If it's on the CSX side, it'll at some point revert to CSX ownership.
Chair, Board, Rob Pinckney, Senior Director of Projects, overseeing projects that are not in Northern Virginia, as we affectionately call ROVA, or the rest of Virginia. Start off with a little bit back to some more glamorous stuff, some teasers of what's coming. So we've worked with the team for New River Valley, NetS, the engineering folks, and created these renderings. These are exactly the 90 some odd percent, exactly what you can envision to be done once we get out there and finished in 27. So including colors, so brick color, soffit color, roof color, all those things are now selected and coordinated. And the next one we'll show will be the building as well, and we'll take a look at that. But you'll see the high level platform with the stairs, ramps. There's 150 odd parking spaces, the one-way bus, because this is a one-way facility, one way in, one way out. Long platform and canopy, 960 feet, with 2/3 of that covered by the canopy, with a gap in the middle for the building. We do have some ADA spots as well as some EV charging spots as well. So this is a utility building that is, if you were to do this project to start with, you renovate the building, the original building. We don't have that option. We do this a little bit backwards, right? So in here is all the electrical, networking, comms, everything that basically makes the platform work when trains come and go. So fire up the pins, all those things. So this is a separate building that we own. The building down in the middle or to the left there is the old station 1906 building. That's going to be renovated after this project. So it's very close, but not quite. But we'll be servicing this with trains before that building is in place.
Real quick,
Yep,
can you go back real
sure.
quick? So everyone gets their bearings. That's heading toward Bristol. Where's Beth?
Yeah, thank you.
That's heading,
Yeah.
that direction is Bristol. This direction is Roanoke.
It's that direction, Bradford, right?
Well, Radford's next, and then on the way.
Just kidding. All right, so here's the building from the track side. So keep in mind, this is the dedicated passenger track for the platform and the station. This is one of the two main lines that NS has out on that project. It's one of their busiest lines, heads off to the Midwest. So that's the 1906 building. So that rendering is actually from the architects that are working with the station authority to provide that. So that is actually true on color and all the different selections as well. So again, you can see we've done a lot of work trying to make those two different projects coordinate, and a lot of kudos to the teams for keeping those all straight. You see a little bit of the high level fence right here. That's due to the close proximity. You can almost reach out and touch the building when you're standing on the platform. And we didn't want people accessing the roof or doing silly things. So we ended up raising that fence in the back as part of this design iteration with the renderings. These have been a great tool and also a great PR thing. Also, now we're going to start sharing these out publicly. So. All right, so some of the less glamorous stuff. All right, so we're out there. This is a project we are delivering next year. We're excited to stay on track. DJ did allude to, we had a stretch goal to get that concrete done, but we are making good, solid project progress out there, excuse me. So you can see it's recently completed drill pillar foundation. So that was really to set up the platform and canopy. There's 114 of those. Those are all done. There's a lot of signal work being done. If you remember, I think we showed one of the previous presentations. We were doing a cellular concrete, which is a lightweight fill that looked like layers of Cool Whip that we built up to make the platform or make the parking lot to grade. And we'll show you what that parking lot's starting to look like and shape up. That parking lot retaining wall is done now, which is a fill wall. You heard Jeff talk about top down. We did a bottom up wall for the parking lot. We're also doing a top down for the depot street. We'll show you a picture as well. The layover site's been a little bit quieter. It's been sitting, doing a little bit of electrical work. Big thing for the was actually a win this past week. We ordered the modular building for Bradford, which has been a long time coming. So that's where the crew will get change orders, get orders for track and crew orders. The station site has been very busy. Platform walls and piloters are going on. You'll see some progress in some of the photos upcoming. Over at the layover, we haven't shown it this week. Just happened. Ballast came to town. So now the tracks were unballasted for a couple of months. Now ballast is in. Light poles went up this week, and you'll see that as well. So on to some pictures. So on the left, Jeff said it's a big thing to get the signal crew out there. They've been out, they've installed some gantries. We've had a couple of different ones. This is actually the western one at Cambria. This picture on the right is actually standing above the parking lot looking east. So this is actually the MOW building for Norfolk Southern that we built as part of this project. this wall is actually the wall I was just talking about. You can see some of the old, this is the cellular concrete getting filled in with some subcase. That is now complete. I'll show you that next picture. So here's the wall again. And now we fill it up. So if you all remember, this grade here is about 15, 20 feet down from the depot. It breaks this whole parking lot. So when you pull in, it's not such a big steep slope, right? So now this is starting to shape up and look like the parking lot. So this is actually the islands between, if you remember the rendering. Here's the bus lane, and this is starting to be the parking for cars. And then off to the right will be the station building.
Will you have bike parking there too?
There are bike racks, so not specific parking per se as like a dedicated space, but there are racks around. Right, onto concrete. So these are actually pictures of the wall and pilasters for the platform. On the left is all the formwork, and you can see that's actually the gantry, the single gantry in the previous picture. So this is the western side of the platform approach. Again, 960 feet worth of platform. We are about over a third of that now. Have another pour coming up this week. Fingers crossed the weather's not ideal the rest of this week, and so we're gonna see some rain out in Christiansburg area, but we are working forward on that. Keep in mind, high level platform, underneath there are hundreds of feet of conduit that we have to install for all the electrical and comms. So that's up next as well. And then comes the columns for the canopy, as well as there will be precast planks and a topping slab for the ADA compliance. So right here is a pump truck, right? So again, a tight site for us, one way in, one way out. Best way to service that with a pump truck for the pours. And I think just a candid picture with the NS train in the back. So again, active corridor that we're working right next to all the time. So this is a less glamorous wall, but so on the left is this is again a different type of wall. We've heard a couple of different ones. This is a soldier pile lagging wall. So those piles, they're galvanized. They actually get drilled and then set in concrete. There's 110 of those. We are over halfway on them now. You can start. This is actually the wall looking overhead. This is east to west. So this crane is actually one starting to set the lagging. So what we do is we drill the piles in, then we start to excavate, and then we slide those panels in. Before anybody asks, that is not the finished product. So on that goes a nice precast panel that basically slides in on the H files, and there's almost like almost if you're playing Connect Four, right? You slide those in, and they have a nice form liner on them. They look like ashlar stone or block. So they're coming. They've been ordered, but they're all very custom as well. So this wall is at the tallest point about 20 feet, and right behind it is Depot, right? So this is the busy little street down in downtown Christiansburg. So we do see a lot of traffic there. And again, we had to put this wall in to make enough space to get to buses and traffic inside. All right, moving over to Radford. So these are the two new layover tracks. Like I just said, these in this picture were unballasted. They are now almost ballasted. They're in process. Sheet pile wall to separate us from the Norfolk Southern yard. There'll be a fence around the entire perimeter of this for Amtrak folks. On here will come the modular building. On the left is electrical pads and compressor pads. So a lot of power that we need for the new aero trains when they come. It's changed some of the new things for Amtrak, but making good steady progress here as well.
Real quick.
Yeah.
That direction is the Christiansburg station.
There you go. Yep.
So the train will be coming from that direction here for the layover facility at Radford. And that is Radford University track and field.
Yep.
There's softball, baseball in there, a lot of that. So a lot of the sports are on the left-hand side of the picture, most of the academics on the right-hand side of the picture.
And downtown Radford's on the right-hand side.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Correct.
And there's a bridge right here, University Boulevard. This is actually a drone shot, but it's a great spot to stop and look over if you're ever in that area. Oh. Back up. Any questions about New River Bound? Thank you.
I know we were saying 27. Is it too early to say early 27, late, mid? Following anybody.
Tell you this, it's not going to be Christmas 2027. It'll be before that, but it's too early to say early.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's we're not using 2027 as, oh my gosh, we've got 365 days in 2027 to get it done. We're pushing for early, but we are under promising and over delivering.
Hope for the best. Afterwards.
Yeah.
There you go. Any other questions on the construction update?
The next logical question is when can Radford University get on the train at Radford?
You get to Radford till we get to Christian.
I know.
Okay, I got a bunch of these.
To that, I told Cynthia as we were watching the amazing work at Long Bridge and others, said that makes getting it to Bristol seem like just easy peasy. I mean, just looking at the complexity of that work and the Potomac River, and all those complications, it seems so simple.
My list of responses doesn't have one for that.
It's his response.
I will say this, though, that we would have to negotiate with Norfolk Southern to have a stop in Bradford. Our agreement with them does contemplate that. So it's definitely on the table. And as we're building the labor facility there, we're building a high level platform. So we could use the platform we're building that the maintenance folks will be using to clean the train and to service the train. That platform could be a station platform in the far future, not 2027.
Yeah, aren't college kids like a big part of the demographic? It's a Jeremy question, right? Whenever I ride the train, it's old people like me and college kids.
Yes, so let me answer the question directly. Yes, that's what do I know. But to expand, really that generation, whether they're in college or not, they want to stare at screens and they don't want to be bothered with driving and getting gas and doing all that. So that generation is huge for our ridership. And Amtrak will tell you that if you've got a station in a college town, it is a heavily utilized station.
Mary?
Yeah. Yep.
Patty, to that point also, our conversations, University of Tennessee is all over about conversations for that exact reason. Very, very interesting.
We'll meet them in Bristol, right?
And Amtrak started that second line in Virginia down to, where's Liberty University? Lynchburg. I was in an Amtrak work meeting. They were shocked that had the highest ridership than any line, even City of the Northeast corridor. Yeah.
Yeah, when we started Lynchburg in 2009,
Yeah.
there was an estimate that there'd be
Oh, that's
30,000
right.
riders, and it turned out to be 100,000 riders.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember there was a told story before, there was a big fight because the CFO in Amtrak at that point was really kind of a jerk. And hey, if this isn't funding itself, you're going to have to come up with the money in Virginia. And then Virginia said, okay, we'll take that risk. And then 100,000 riders came and there was profit. And that CFO said, well, we want that profit.
That's right, TJ. It's amazing.
Any other questions on the construction update?
All righty, let's move forward. Again, I just want to note, we do have some folks who are leaving around noon. So if we can move quickly through the next few items, that'd be great.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Eklund. I'm the Government Affairs Manager with VPRA. This is the first time I've been speaking to you, so I thought I'd introduce myself. We're just going to do a quick run through of this General Assembly cycle, give you guys some updates on what we were focusing on. So these are just some of the key dates. As you can see, this was an even year, so it's a long session. So it's 60 days long. It began on January 14th and ended here a little while ago on Saturday, March 14th. Next year will be a short year of 45 days. So when it says long, it's really not that long. It moves just as quick as those short years. Some dates that are important that are coming up is, of course, the governor has until this Saturday at 11:59 to take actions on any of the bills that have not been finished since reconvene session. She's taken action on a lot of bills this week. I'm not sure how many she has left. I'm sure there might be a couple, but most of the bills that we've been tracking have already had action taken by the governor on it. And then, of course, for any of those bills that don't have delayed enactment clauses on them, they'll be effective starting July 1. So our priorities this session was, of course, really focusing on the two bills that we had, HB 141 and HB 446. Westerman is going to talk more about those later, but they were just mostly general cleanup bills, some legislative fixes that we've noticed over the last 5 years that we thought would be beneficial for us in the future. There were over 2,000 bills introduced this year. So of course, one of our big priorities was making sure that we went through, vetted all of those bills for any impacts that they might have on VPRA's ability to operate in the future. And then of course, monitor any of those bills as they move through. In some cases, when applicable, we would meet with the patron of the bill and work with them to address whatever our concerns were, putting in an amendment that solved whatever our issue was with it. We had a couple of those bills this year. Most of the time they deal with things like easements or eminent domain, usually in that space of kind of increasing our cost of doing business. Of course, we spent our General Assembly educating and informing new members about VPRA. It's Virginia. There was an election last year. All 100 House of Delegate seats were up for re-election. So there were a number of new members that we wanted to just make sure that we met with, let them know who we were and what projects we were doing, especially new members with projects in their district. And then, of course, always trying to work to build relationships with those legislators, making sure that they feel comfortable and bought into what we're doing, that we're accountable for the work we're doing. We use a lot of taxpayer money on these projects. So we just want to make sure that our General Assembly is aware of what's going on. And of course, session's a great time where they're all in one place to talk to them about those projects. As I said, there were 2,000 bills, so it's not just me who's looking over them. We have a really great legislative review team, which consists of a couple staff members from each different area of VPRA that help me go through the bills to make sure that they indeed either don't or do have an impact on VPRA. We have a daily process. I go through, I look through the bills, anything that I think might needs additional sort of monitoring and vetting. I put it in an Excel sheet and I let my wonderful colleagues who are sometimes smarter than I am in that space take a deeper dive into that to make sure that we aren't missing anything in the process. And then, of course, we want to be able to do our jobs without some of the great partnerships that we have. So, of course, connecting with DRPT, VDOT, and all of our other stakeholders like Northwest Southern and CSX to make sure that we're on the same page about legislation as it's moving through and that they knew what we were doing and what our 2 pieces of legislations were about. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Michael Westman here, who's going to get into more details about both bills.
Thanks, Jessica. And by the way, before I say anything about the bills that we got passed this year, I have to say Jessica did a tremendous job for the team this year. We probably talked 5 times a day during session. When the snow and ice was coming, Jessica looked at me and said, I don't know what to do. We have all these meetings with senators the next day. I think I'm going to sleep in the office. I laughed. She wasn't joking. So
No, it's not.
she really dedicated herself to our bills and did a tremendous job. And I just kind of went where she said and did what she said and went successful. All right, so we had 2 bills this year. One is HB 141, the other one HB 446. We split them into the first one is what we call general cleanup. The second one had to do with land use. So we kind of separated them out. I'm not going to go way into detail, but I'm going to tell you generally the substance of each bill, what we were accomplishing. HB 141, the changes in the law because of that require us to change our procurement rules. So the next slide, I'm going to talk about some updates we have to our procurement rules. After that, we'll ask for a motion to adopt the changes that were in the procurement rules that went out in the board package. So that's where we're headed with all this. So starting on the left, HB 141, after 5 years of operating, realized that there were some gray areas in the law. We realized that some of our sister agencies like VDOT, DRPT had the benefit of certain exemptions that we thought we should have as well as a transportation entity. So the majority of the changes in the law that we introduced through HB 141 is simply clarifying some exemptions or gaining for ourselves some exemptions that we didn't have. I won't go into each and every one of them, but the top one's a very good example, state grievance procedures. There's an act in the law that gives state employees access to state codified grievance procedures. We're different. Our enabling acts says our board has to adopt grievance procedures for our employees. That was done back when we started in 2021, 2022 timeframe. We have this conflict because when you look in the Code of Virginia, we're not explicitly exempt from state grievance procedures. We don't want to have a situation where some employee wants to pursue grievance procedures and we don't know which one applies. You know, there's one argument that the state wants to do, there's one argument that our board adopted wants to. So just as a cleanup measure, we had an explicit provision added to the code that says VPRA is exempt from state grievance procedures. It follows the exact model that authorities like ABC, Virginia Port Authority have, where they're explicitly exempted from state grievance procedures because their boards also adopt specific grievance procedures for those two entities. And the same is true down the line. You can look at every single one of those. One of our sister agencies has those exemptions. So we said, hey, treat us like you treat VDOT, treat us like we treat the port. So we have more flexibility under the law generally, or we're exempt from certain fees when we talk about our projects. The very last bullet point down here, that is the one unique feature of our bill. Nobody else has this. This is a procurement related change. We go out and we use what's called bench contracts for our engineering firms. We'll solicit offers. We will hire 4, 5, or 6 firms all at the same time. We'll say you're on the bench. When we need you, we'll tell you, we'll issue task orders. The problem with that is under the existing law, there were very low thresholds. You can see for a project, you can only spend $2.5 million. And for the entire term of the project, entire term of the contract, you can only spend up to $10 million for any given firm. We found that very limiting. So we would have new projects pop up. We would need to issue a task order and hire an engineer to start design work. And we would be capped at $2.5 million for this new project. Well, we often need to spend more than that. And what you really don't want to do, you don't want to start with one engineer firm and then midstream switch to another one, because the work product, they can't hand those off very efficiently. Besides that, if we went through a traditional procurement and said, okay, this is going to cost, we think $10 million to design. Let's start at the very beginning and do a competitive procurement for this project specific design work. That would add like a year to what we're trying to do.
If I can, while no other entity in the state might have the $10 million caps, the freight railroads don't have the caps for design. North Carolina doesn't have caps for their North Carolina DOT. Rail division doesn't have caps. We talked to them. So what we're asking for is to act more like a railroad, or like some other states might do with regard to railroad activities. So I mentioned Aquan River third track. If some elements of that, rather than taking 9 to 12 months to do a procurement, we can go to our bench, which we're doing this summer, and give someone a task for one entity up to $9-10 million instead of the much slower process. So thanks for letting me jump in. This is something we worked with ACEC Virginia on for over a year. We started meeting with them in March of last year to work through these changes to get their support. So thank you to Christina and President, her team at ACEC Virginia and the engineering firms for working through this with us to get to a point where we want to move these projects forward in a quick manner.
Thanks, Mike. So that's a summary of HB 141. HB 446 is our land use bill. This is the key here. It aligns our quick take process with what all other condemnors in Virginia have to follow. Quick take makes it sound like we're rushing in without notice and taking private property. No, that's not what we're doing. There's a very prescriptive process where we notify landowners, we go through a platting process and appraisal process, we make offers, we try to negotiate. So it's the same process at the point where we cannot come to a voluntary transaction and agree on price with the landowner. We will go file papers in court. We'll pay money into court. The landowner will actually have access to the money that we pay into court. And while the trial happens, there will be a jury trial that happens that determines valuation. The landowner says the value is high, we say it's lower, and then there will be a jury trial to determine the actual valuation and what the landowner ultimately gets paid. During the years that that process might take, we actually get access to the land and get to undertake construction activities so the project is not slowed down. So we talk about quick take, that's what we mean. Instead of having to wait for the whole court process to play out, we get earlier access and to the property and get to undertake construction activities during the time where the court process is playing out. We have very broad, very robust quick take powers. The problem is we don't have to follow the process that all the other condemnors in the state have to follow. We also don't get to follow the process. So we're filing documents in court that don't look like what court clerks are used to. We're paying deposits in court in a way that they're not used to receiving money. So we said, we need to clean this up. We need to be like everybody else. So we got the law passed that said, hey, you VPRA must follow its title, chapter 3, title 25.1. You have to, just like VDOT, just like other condemnors, you have to follow this process where we file certificates and the quick take process. And that's something that clerks are used to, and it puts us in the exact same procedural posture as all other condemnors. I heard that we need to hurry up, so I won't, we have a few other sort of minor features of the bill. One is that, hey, if we condemn land and acquire it and later we want to sell it, we have a duty to offer that back to the prior owner, exactly like VDOT does. And then there were some categories, well, we didn't really, technically, we did not expand the categories of land that we can condemn. There are some very specific statutes that give VDOT the ability to condemn specific types of property. And we're looking at that saying, okay, we have this broad authority, but then there's this very specific statute and we're not in it. We don't want to have to argue about whether we have this authority or not. So we went in and cleaned that up. Okay, so because of this change here with how we do our engineering bench contracts, those prior thresholds were reflected into our procurement rules. We had to update those thresholds. So we pulled our procurement rules out. We haven't updated them since 2022. And we said, okay, what needs to change? The red line was included in the board package that went out. But just as a quick summary, here are all the substantive changes. First, we said, look, where there's a federal requirement, we have lots of federal money in our program. There's a federal requirement that applies, that takes priority over our procurement rules. We had to update the definition of professional services to include financial advisors, insurance brokers, because the law behind that changed. So we updated to mirror the law. There are certain federal thresholds for micro and small purchases, which are non-competitive procurements. Under 15,000, you can do a micro purchase, which means you can just buy what you need to buy. Under 350,000, you can do a small, which is rather than doing a long formal drawn up procurement, you just get 3 quotes and you can purchase from the best quote you get. The prior thresholds were 10,000 and 250,000 respectively. Since the federal limits went up, we proposed to change our rules as well. Section 3.25, we already talked about our bench contracts and those thresholds, so we reflected that in the procurement rules. Section 4.3, this is very minor, but what we found ourselves doing on our very large mega projects is we not only have a performance bond that guarantees performance of the contract, we also get a guarantee from the parent corporations, because often what we have is a sole purpose entity that's created to undertake the project. So what it is a second layer of security. So the entity with the actual financial means to perform is the one who's also promising to perform the contract. And then section 9, we removed the requirement for DBE, disadvantaged business enterprise usage plans, from our solicitations. Well, why did we do that? The legal landscape on DBE has changed drastically in the past 18 months or so. This past October, there was federal guidance that came down that basically said, not basically, it said, look, this historic practice of saying, okay, if you're in this racial category or if you're in this gender category, your business is automatically deemed disadvantaged and you count toward contract goals. That's gone. And what they said is all DBEs need to be reevaluated, and then you need to look at the actual statements of the owners of the business, and they have an affirmative duty to prove historical advantage. And if they can't, then they're not going to be listed as DBE. So what that's done is that's thrown us into a posture of, okay, everybody who is and has been a DBE is now being reevaluated, and nobody is who's applying to become a DBE now is being granted an application. At the moment, everybody's kind of in this hopper being reevaluated and has to get recertified under new rules. So we don't want to look at our contractors and say, tell me which DBEs you're going to use or tell me what percentage you're going to use, because they can't really, because we don't know what's going to happen on the back end of this process. So we said, okay, we kept all of the small business, the state level designation SWAN plans inside of the procurement rules, but we've removed the DBE plans. And what the procurement rules say now, if adopted, they'll say, when a DBE requirement applies, we will follow the program requirements and kind of leave it at that, because right now it's kind of unknown how it's all going to shake out. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the changes to the procurement rules that we're advancing, or the legislation that we got passed this past session.
Any questions? Right. Thank you, Mr. Westerman. So we need to take board action to approve this change to the procurement rules. So I'm looking to see if there's a motion to approve proposed changes to procurement?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? Alrighty, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Oh, sorry, forgot about our, anyone else online? Sorry. All right, anyone opposed? Say nay. Anyone abstaining? Alrighty, the ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Westerman. Thank you, Ms. Eklund. All right, so what we're gonna do, just to make sure we have enough time, we're actually gonna jump to item 15 to discuss the budget. And work through that, and then we will kind of see where we're at the end of that, how it might advise our agenda. Turn this over to Ms. Farmer.
And while they're getting ready, I just want to point out that later in the day, we're going to talk about project funding updates. What we want to do, and this is similar to what we did last year. Last year, we asked you all to approve a budget with the knowledge that 3 months from now, we're going to have more information on some contracts that are going to be negotiated. This afternoon, we're going to hear about the sidings that are going to be procured in federal. So what we have in now for the siding projects is our best estimate, but we know we're going to come back in August, September, October, and give you updates on that. So the order shift kind of changes that conversation a little bit. Just be advised that what you see in the budget for the sidings, we all know is going to change, and we'll hear more about that. So any questions on that? Laura, I do that.
Yes, there's contingency on those projects, so I'm really excited that we have changes. So good morning, everybody. Selma and I are going to provide an overview of the recommended budget fiscal year 2027.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Selma Nahanovich. I'm the Director of Financial Planning and Analysis. We're going to start off by taking a look at a summary of our budget process. So the VPRA budget consists of 3 core components, starting with the capital projects, capital and operating grants, and operations. And please note that our operations includes Amtrak operations and our administrative. The 2 capital components have to go to the CTB for approval, and the capital budget was provided to the CTB by the February 1st deadline, and it was approved on April 22nd. So next, we're going to take a look at our larger VPRA financial plan, which compares our sources and uses from inception of our program to fiscal year 31, which is the completion of our core capital program. So the top section we looked at during the January board meeting, so we're not going to take a look at that again. We're going to focus on the bottom section of the slide, which includes changes since our January board meeting. So our sources, which is our revenues, increased by $0.8 million. Our uses, which are our expenses, also increased by $24 million, causing a decrease of $23 million in our management reserve. Right. And taking a deeper dive into the primary drivers that are causing the increase in our sources, we're going to focus on the right table of the slide. The left side we talked about during the January board meeting. So there was a $0.3 million increase in our sources related to a Chrissy earmark award that VPRA received for the Alexandria Fourth Track project. There was an increase in the DC Ped Bridge contribution of $4.0 million. And that was offset by 2 decreases in the Stafford utility reimbursement of $3.3 million and a decrease of $0.2 million related to the access fee payments that we make to VRE. And then on the next slide, we're going to talk about the changes in our uses. So this slide just shows a overview by budget component. So we're going to focus on the April update column. So in the I-95 corridor, there was a $3 million increase in our net base budget changes. Other capital projects saw a decrease of $9 million, and our operations section increased by $30 million, excuse me, for a total change in uses of $24 million. So we're going to dive deeper into each of the budget components. We're going to focus on the peach colored lines. The rest of the items we talked about during the January meeting. So these are changes that happened between January and now. So we are comparing the amended fiscal year 26 budget to our proposed fiscal year 27 budget. So starting with Long Bridge North and South, the North component project budget increased by $1.5 million. The South component increased by $3 million, and both of those are related to the district DOT project oversight costs that were not previously included in those project budgets. Next, we're going to talk about the Potomac Creek third track. So this is siding, the project siding A. There was an additional $2.5 million increase in that project budget, in addition to the increase that we saw in January, related to utility expenses that are not covered by Stafford County. So these are expenses that VPRA is responsible for and will not be reimbursed by Stafford County. And lastly, the Potomac Creek third track. So this is the Stafford Utilities portion of that project. There was an increase of $1 million related to our fined 30% sign-ups. There were no additional changes to the Western Rail Corridor, the $2 million we talked about in January. All right, so in the other capital projects component of the budget, the Manassas Line capital maintenance decreased, by $9 million. And this is as a result of refined estimates that were provided to us from Norfolk Southern related to the capital maintenance of the M line. There was no additional change since January in the capital and operating grant section capital budget. And the next couple of slides just show our expenditure plans for our capital projects. And there's more details by project that were included in the board materials that were provided to you all. I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions to the capital side of our budget. No. Okay. And I'm going to hand it over to Laura to talk about our Amtrak operations budget and our admin budget.
Okay. So since January, when we talked to you then, we're within a couple of weeks of the service changes that occurred on January 12th. And we made note that based on lessons learned, we come back to you with any changes that we recommend related to operating costs. What we found is that the most extensive change that we have related to operations has to do with a change that we're recommending working with Amtrak on and have proceeded to implement, which is opening up what is considered deadhead cars, where there's additional capacity available in these trains that start in Virginia, where we've removed service, particularly in Richmond. We're opening up an additional car to passengers, and that affects not only availability, but ticket pricing as well. And so we worked with Amtrak to estimate what it would take to bring on an additional conductor, the staffing, the Wi-Fi, the cleaning responsibilities, all the things that goes along with opening that capacity. And that value is about $4.5 million. I felt that was best related to the operations going forward. And so this change of $32 million represents the 5-year impact of that change throughout the remaining construction and the reduced service. And so that is the most significant change in the operating budget that we're recommending since January. Related to asset maintenance, we had refined budgets provided by Norfolk Southern for a slight adjustment there. Related to operations administrative costs, we have an overall change of $2 million. We've had additional refinements of costs, but mainly our safety and security improvements have been added as a new line item. We have property that we need to take care of that's beyond the rail asset, that we have responsibilities to maintain safety and security. And then in other operations, this decrease is primarily related to refined bus service cost. So as we brought the buses online and also entered into that procurement, our estimates were a little bit too high related to what we saw in the procurement result. A good news story in that area. This slide just provides a view of the amended current year budget against the recommendations for fiscal year 2027. Most of these adjustments are related to the change in service year over year, but also bringing New River Valley online and some additional costs that we'll experience in the western side of the state. This slide provides the details of the administrative budget changes for VPRA. With regard to payroll and benefits, our staffing remains pretty much the same in terms of assumptions year over year. The biggest adjustment here is us making adjustments for our retirement costs for the agencies and what we get passed on to us through VRS. And so that pension adjustment has been provided based on what we've learned over the last 2 years. With regard to professional services, we have a planned depreciation study related to the property that we have. We'll be updating the financial plan going forward in the upcoming months. We also have recommended adjustments in our IT area related to cybersecurity and penetration testing. They get grouped in that category. And the biggest change here also is related to a station study. As we're making improvements to the rail and adding capacity, it's very important that we look at the stations and take a look at any recommended improvements going forward that we can not only recommend for funding, but seek alternative funding to make those improvements and working with Amtrak going forward. In the area of IT, as we've brought systems online and having the systems amortization across, that is really just the driver of these costs. We also have additional reporting responsibilities related to using our internal financial system to make sure that we're getting the best data out of it to make recommendations. And we're also looking for a grant system implementation. We have tremendous alternative sources. Managing those is quite cumbersome, and we're looking for solutions to help us work a little bit smarter related to seeking reimbursements. And then for building and office related costs, we've had a decrease year over year. We had some one-time expenses for building improvements that are no longer in the budget. In terms of the other employment costs, we have other employee costs just based on historical spending as well as future needs. We're looking at a new human resources and payroll system. What we have works for us, but we're not 100% happy with it, and we're looking at opportunities, but we don't envision a tremendous cost increase there. One of the biggest items here is also planned groundbreaking and what it's going to take to do that event and the expectations around it. We have an 11% increase related to insurance costs, just based on what we have incurred to date and future needs. We've also adjusted our third-party projects administration budget. Again, this is included in our administrative budget, but it represents money provided by others. And then, as I mentioned earlier, property management. This is a new line item in our budget related to improvements that we need to make related to signage, fencing, or other improvements that are needed at these sites beyond the actual rail. Any questions on those details? This provides this an analysis of a comparison of our administrative costs to total expenditures. Obviously, as the capital program is really kicking into high gear, this graph is trending in the same way we would expect. And then in terms of the management reserve, with those adjustments that we described related to mainly to the Amtrak operations, our management reserve is decreased since our last quarter to $89 million. And we still have about 23% of our remaining program to get to final construction pricing. And so this is something that we're watching very carefully, but we felt like that operational adjustment was really required to ensure that the remaining routes are operating the way they should.
Any questions?
I just want to note, particularly for those who might be listening in case you're wondering why we didn't have a lot of questions on that. I just wanted to note the meeting that happened last month. I think it was on April 26th. We do have a separate finance and audit committee that Member Dorsch is our chairperson for that. We had a very robust discussion in that meeting about a lot of these budget issues and about particular project where funding was at and budgets for those. So I did just want to assure anyone listening, we do have robust discussions. I don't know if there's anything you want to add in from that meeting, but I think we've kind of got the update where we're at here too. But anything else you might want to add?
Well, just that the committee recommended approval of the budget to the full board.
Righty, so with that, if there are no questions, additional questions on the budget, could we get a motion to approve the VPRA FY27 budget and management reserve?
I move approval.
Second.
Second, alrighty, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Anyone abstaining? All right, the ayes carry it. Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you. All right, let's do our time check. I think that was so fast and furious. We can go back to, should we go to the bylaw text? All right, let's have that conversation on some changes, proposed changes to the bylaws and the bylaws.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all. Every year we take a look at the bylaws were created back in 2018. Look to make any required changes, recommended changes each year. In this cycle, we took a look at what we did last year. Last year, we made the change actually on the bottom. We had discovered an issue where the executive director's authority to move money back and forth didn't allow for new projects. And the example was we had a siding. We worked with CSX and decided that that siding was in a place that was good, but wouldn't require us to replace a highway, which was very, very expensive. We talked to CSX, that we moved the siding north a little bit, take that concrete out, save us a significant amount of money. They said, yeah, let's look at that. Let's study that. Well, when we wanted to study that, we had to create a new line item to study what would be a new siding, and I didn't have the authority to do that. So last year we did a bylaw amendment that would allow me to not only move money back and forth without increasing the budget, but also to create a new item. That authority is in there now. We are now coming back this year to ask for that same modification for both the passenger service budget and for the administration budget. Comes in play. For example, Amtrak comes and says, hey, we've got a new line item, we've got new train sets, we're going to create a maintaining arrow. Why not? Or some other required line item. We would have to come back to the board and get approval. What these changes allow us to do, gives me the authority to create a new line item up to a certain percentage of the budget, 1.5% of the budget. And of course, it would be transparent. We showed you the executive director report, we talked about it, but it prevents us from having to get the whole board together to vote on a new line item or to make small movements like that. So we're looking for that same authority that we have now under capital and capital projects to be extended to passenger service and to administration. The other thing that we're looking to do is what we talked about earlier. The bylaws currently say when you give me authority to do something, I've got 90 days to do it. As we've seen with partners across the board, freight railroads, Amtrak, DOT, sometimes it takes longer than that 90 days. So we're asking to extend that authority from 90 days to 12 months. And those are the changes that we're recommending and requesting. Happy to answer any questions on.
I've got one. On extending that to 12 months, do we think we should extend it any longer? And so we're not having to come back again if it looks like maybe even another 30 days or 60 days beyond that.
I wouldn't want that for a couple reasons. Number one, if we're bringing it to the board and we've got 12 months left in negotiation, I think we're bringing it too early. The other thing is that we've got 3 members every 12 months that rotate off. And I don't want to be in a situation where I'm now signing something that less than 75% of the board has voted on.
Okay.
And look, we speaking for the current leadership, when there are changes, we bring them to you. No surprise, you can say that all the time. So we're not going to get authority for something and then do not hear about it for 12 months.
Right.
But I think 12 months is way on the far.
All right. Thank you.
That's probably yes.
I would just note that I think that in the transparency, which is very noted here, not
Yeah.
anything about that, but I think that's the important piece of this, is that transparency of whenever any of those kind of changes are made, that the board is advised. I think that's the easy part of it. Yeah.
Totally agree. No surprise.
Any other questions or concerns that members may have? All right, well, hearing none, we have a motion to approve the adoption of the revised VPRA bylaws.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all right, upon a motion and a second, let's see if we have all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you. All righty, we have been fast and furious. I know that we have a couple still on our agenda. Do you think, Statler, we could talk about one of the project funding updates?
Sure.
And still be able to have the discussion we need to have there before we break for lunch. Is that fine with folks if we have a few more minutes while we have everyone? I also just do want to note, if folks do know that you have scheduling issues, please do let us know ahead of time. The staff is always great at working with me to adjust our agendas as needed. So as always, just let us know if things come up. We know that does happen at times. Right, Mr. McLaughlin, I'll have you and the team. Kick things off.
Much like last year, we passed the budget and then we came back to you and talked to you about upgrade your Ford track and King and Commonwealth. Similarly, I already mentioned some projects such as Franconia Lorton are going to procurement soon. Some siding projects moving to. So we wanted to, in the same context of the budget meeting, also talk about these so you're not surprised in the future. And with that, like this gives you an idea, just a good picture of when we're building a third track where it's being built. So we can move on. And I'm gonna hand over to Rob. Want to be quick?
Right, in the spirit of being quick. So these are the 5 siding projects that are currently active. Mike alluded to this a little bit earlier. We're gonna talk about D, E, F, and C. Keep in mind, they were A, B, C for phase 1, E, and F phase 2 previously, so the nomenclature was a little bit more, now it's a little bit mixed up. But from north, and the Neabsco to Ridge third track is D, Aquia Creek third track is E, Potomac third track is A, Crossroads third track is F, and then Taylorsville third track is C. So a good smattering across the board. So we started to progress these projects. We've talked about them a few different times. 4 new sidings, C, D, E, and F. Remember, C was relocated from its previous location to a new location in Taylorsville. So that's why I consider it still a new one. They all just kicked off. We are now, working in earnest, 50% plans with the CSX team. We're working on 30% plans with them now. This is really the first time where we're starting to see more than a couple lines on paper, right? So we're starting to see some cross sections. We're starting to see some slope lines. We're starting to get an understanding of right-of-way impacts, but we still have a lot to learn. We're still 30% is very, very early. They currently represent, over 12 miles worth of new third track. So all that being said, we are diligently working forward. Field work is going on, and if you're up and down the corridor, I see folks off to the side. They are doing non-filing work as far as wetland flagging and environmental studies. We're doing additional topo work, so on and so forth. All this is to get information to make the 60% plans even better. We've received 1 set of plans for siding C for Taylorsville. We expect another one pretty much month on month over the next 3 months. We are still digesting the C in the middle that we got. So it's a first glance. It's going through our TAP process as far as estimate updates. As you can imagine, costs are fluctuating all over the place with different things going on in the world. So we're still kind of churning through that. I would suspect that these are all, like I said, step back and say all these numbers that are shown as budget numbers were based on 0% design. They were our best guess based on mile markers, what could be out there, what might be out there. As we continue to learn and iterate, these numbers would be refined. So again, 30% plans, very, very little information still. We will expect that we'll be back sometime late summer to talk about these again, but just wanted to give a heads up to the board. We are making good progress, but likely we'll be revisiting the budgets on all 4 of these.
At what percentage of the design completion do you feel comfortable about where we are from a budget perspective?
When it's finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every iteration, really 60% starts to be where we have a lot of information that we can kind of chew on, that I feel a little bit more comfortable. 30% starts to, take a little bit of mud out of the water, but 60 starts to be a little bit better, and 90 obviously as we iterate.
Oh, that's, yeah, you're accurate. Do you want to point out citing E and F, the Fredericksburg area, friends, those are down in your area. E is giving their, the Brook Station, A was Leland. F is going to include, this thing is Summit. It's going to have 4 quad gates we're putting in.
Some crossing rails.
We work with DRPT, so that was a rail crossing elimination grant DRPT got. They give because it's in a project area. So I know that's a tricky area down that neck of the way. So I do want to point out that those are included in that cost estimate. But yeah, 30% design, we feel better. Again, we always feel better the further along you get. Retaining walls, things of water, things of that nature are things that utilities, thank you, right of way. Figuring out if the design is, you get 30% design, or do we need to buy more right of way? Is that going to delay project? Therefore, it delays project, the cost could increase. Some projects you might have some pleasant surprises. You don't need any more right of way, which makes us happy, makes Michael's team happy to acquire the right of way. So we're still learning a lot of that information as well. Putting that.
And just point out, so the sidings projects are legacy projects. So they were part of the original portfolio that we were blessed with in 2020, 2021. We made a decision early on, as we found that we got to 30%. Oh, we didn't account for this, and 6% we didn't account for this, that we were no longer going to put full project estimates into our budget until we were at least at 30%. And that's why Richmond Labor Facility, for example, and some of the other projects that we have that were not part of that original list, we only had the design estimates. And then when we get to a certain percentage, we come back and ask for the full project. In hindsight, and this is hindsight 2019, 2020, we probably would have done that for all the projects because at 0% design, you really don't know what you don't know. And 30%, you can have a good understanding if and only if 30% is done where all the utilities are. And where maps actually map to the actual locations of the property you're looking at. We've had a lot of challenges, as we've talked about, and I'll revisit them. But with, okay, we think the project is going to be right here, and here's our limit of disturbance. Oh, wait a second, we don't own this? I thought we did. Well, the courthouse says you don't. And that adds a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of stress. If you're 30% ensured that all the stuff is accurate, you feel pretty good at 30%. But if there's still a lot of unknowns that you're finding out between 30 and 60, and that's what Rob was very subtly alluding to, you can't commit to anything until you've got those things done.
I remember, I think I recall that when we decided we could save money and speed things up, moving siding C, there's a great maps that shows here's different tracks, crossovers. These are just like dots on one line, right? When we look at it, could we ever get one of those great maps again?
You say, so we showed you where we moved one project to another.
Because this isn't just a dot on a single line, right?
It's 3 miles, yeah. So siding C in this case, actually only 2 miles. So the other siding was right about here. That was, we did want to rebuild Washington, Route 1, Washington Highway. That's what you're referring to. We found out, so we went to CSX almost about 2 years ago now. These things take some time. And we found a location on Kings Dominion Highway, the road that goes into the amusement park. CSX told people 20-something years ago, when you're building something new, widen it enough that if we need to add another track, we can. That's the location you're referring to. So we saved about $100 million. As much as we like building new infrastructure for VDOT, I don't like spending $100 million to build a new infrastructure. So we're going to go into Kings Dominion and we're not gonna have to widen the piers there, as we're doing at Leland. That's what we have to do at Leland. That's why we did the road work there soon. So we can send that out. We can follow up with people and send out that as a reminder to the board. I know you presented that in the past.
Yeah, and I'd say we definitely have a zoom in of each. It's tough to tell, like this is the darker versus the lighter, but we have a zoom in on our website for each of these that gives
Okay.
landmarks, but we also have aerial overlays as well that we're happy to share.
Yeah, and actually, I love that idea. We should just include that every month in the EDR. This is the project, we've got the same project description every month. We bold what's changed. We can include those track charts at a more detailed level, because if you haven't seen it for 3 years, you don't remember.
Yeah, I just had a vague memory of it being a good idea, but then when you look at it, it's like, oh, we moved the dot down to, like, why? Because we didn't have to rebuild an entire like a highway going under the bridge, right? By moving it a few feet down to 2 miles down.
Yeah, a few miles.
Okay.
Now, that bridge was substandard and needed to be improved.
And that would have been on us since we were touching it. Okay,
For our project, so therefore no longer.
good, yeah.
Any other questions on sidings? All right, we'll see you in a couple months about that. All right, Richmond layover facility. So you heard a little earlier, I allude, this is the Achilles heel of our program. We need this in place before everything else. This is equally as important as Long Bridge. Maybe not as glamorous, but equally as important, right? So we can't start service down in the Richmond area and Main Street without this in place. So this project is finally moving along a little bit better. We've talked about grant funding opportunities that we have and we're chasing. We are looking for to close the gap on this. We don't know the answer. We will be back at some point to talk about. So right now you'll see that it's a $10.4 million. That's only for the final design funding. We estimate the project to be over $76 million currently. You heard DJ earlier. This one will have a pit, a canopy, lots of lights. It's three layover tracks. This is a big effort. So that $76 million is in line. We've got a commitment from Amtrak around the $30 million through IIJA, the $15 million for CBTA. That leaves us with a gap. What that gap is and what we will need to ask for is still undetermined, but we're working through it. So just wanted to give the board a heads up and that we'll be back for this project as well. Good progress. We just assigned the final design task order and we're refiring up design. So excited to get going again. I think that's it for me.
Okay, so one project in Northern Virginia that we will likely be coming to the board later this year, later in the fiscal year on is Franconia Wharton Third Track. I know we presented this many times to the board before, but just to recap, this project will basically create 6 miles of new mainline third track where it currently ends just north of the Franconia Springfield VPRA station to just south of Lorton Road and Lorton VPRA station. We'll also be replacing the railroad bridge at Pohick Creek, widening the bridges at Acton Creek and Lorton Road. And then also within the footprint of the project are the railroad bridges over Newington Road. You'll see this in our budget documents and other places. We track the Newington Road project as separate from Third Track, but for all practical purposes, it is part of Third Track. It's been designed as part of Third Track. It will be constructed as part of Third Track. However, it has some separate dedicated funding from VDOT and from an FRA State of Good Repair grant. So we've always tracked it separately, but it will be part of one project that will be procured and constructed by with CSX in the lead. We are at 100% design for this project. We have started right-of-way acquisition. They're well in advance. We have 54 properties that are affected by this work. We expect to have our properties in hand by the end of this summer. And then we'll plan to get to work later this year. The schedule that you see here is what our official program schedule shows. It's a little bit conservative, showing CSX going out with their invitation for bid later this summer, getting a contractor on board by the end of the year and starting construction in 2027. They are actually trying to be more aggressive with that, put the project out for bid either next month or in July, get a contractor on board and try to start some of that work in the 2026 construction season. As I mentioned earlier in our updates, we have been doing some early work at CP Beltway on this project. So we do have work underway and we're ready to keep it moving. The budget that you see here, we have not made any changes to. We are tracking on budget. This is something that was put together at the 30% mark a few years ago. So there are some things in terms of cost that we are watching. you know, as Rob mentioned, there's volatility in the construction market, whether it's labor, materials, those sorts of things. In the last 3 years that could come out in our pricing. However, we have seen a lot of interest in this project. CSX had a lot of bidders for Alexandria Fourth Track. There's a lot of interest in the corridor. So we expect that this is going to be a very competitive procurement, which will be beneficial to our budget. And that, I guess I'll just leave it at that. I think unless there are any other questions, that wraps up our budget updates, or project updates.
All right, thank you, James. So before we break for lunch, there is an item that we would like to discuss in closed session. If folks can do another 15 minutes. All right, could we have a motion to go into closed session then?
So moved.
All right. I move that the board convene in a closed session.
All right, and if there's that, I think you need to read the
Yep.
formal
I
motion,
move-
Mr. Crawford.
I move that the board convene in a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23711A7 and 8 for a briefing by staff members and consultation with legal counsel with respect to an asserted contract claim that may result in litigation and requires the provision of legal advice by counsel.
Can we get a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
And then, can all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Those opposed say nay. Anyone abstaining? The ayes have it.